All right.
We're there?
We're going.
Are you gonna announce
Just in
the
time
date?
for Jeffrey to do it.
Yep, so why
It's, what is today?
Today is Monday the
August
2nd of
2nd.
August,
Okay, well,
2021.
well, you just did it, Chip.
Well, all right, then we're
You
right.
have the honors.
Right. We don't need a time.
You're getting ready to turn 80,
Huh? I'm getting ready to turn 80.
and I'm getting ready to turn in.
You're right.
Good night.
Good night.
Early.
Long time to get here. And I'm ready to turn it.
Right.
I'm going to nod off.
Right, exactly. I'll wake you when it's your turn.
Yeah.
What is it you guys want us to talk about? We don't know what you want us to talk about.
No.
Where's the,
your life, your, growing up.
Well,
Some of the stories that we've heard over and over that we can't get enough of.
I want the hatchet story.
Well,
We can start with that.
We can put in.
I was going to kill the son of a bitch,
right,
okay?
right, exactly. Well, let me just say, the first memory I have of my brother was when Grandma came home from the hospital, and Grandpa was driving. They had Anita's, what was it, a 5-window coupe?
40 Ford business coupe.
Yep, 40 Ford business coupe. And Grandpa came in to Aunt Mildred and Uncle Lynn's house, or actually they said, there's somebody here to see you. And I went to the door, and there was Grandma sitting in the car, and they had the door open so I could see her. And I ran and jumped in the car and almost stepped on him. I had no idea what the hell she was doing. And she said, Chip, be careful of the baby. And I looked down, and there was a little pink face looking back, and I thought, what the hell is this? Where'd they find that? But I was just so tickled to see Mom. And then I remember we drove to the house, and all of the cars were pulled in the backyard. I've seen a picture of it, I think, or maybe it was a movie of me. That movie they had of me, I don't know. But anyway, the end result was that they were getting ready to change Joe's diaper, and I remember. They took his diaper off, and I kept looking, and I thought, I said, what's that? And they said, well, those are his testicles. I remember they were clear, huge.
I was born with elephantitis.
He was born with 3 testicles. Right.
everybody needs a
Because
spare.
well, Joe and I used to say that.
Hey, nice pair.
Right.
The pear and the spare.
Right.
Nice
The pair and the
troika.
Bet you between me and the bartender we got 5.
But that's what I was thinking of her. Buddy, you better have 3 or 4. Whatever it was. 4. You better have 4.
Wordplay stories.
Yeah, I know. Those are good.
Well, I guess the first thing I really remember was having scarlet fever. I remember that.
I remember it.
How old are you?
I don't know.
It was
long before I went to school.
It was 1946 because I was that was my first year in kindergarten, and I had to go stay with Aunt Ada, and I was there for my 6th birthday, and Ma got me a belt, and Aunt Ada, she couldn't hug me because Joe was at home with scarlet fever, but I remember crying because I couldn't. I hid behind Aunt Ada's refrigerator because it was right by the door that went downstairs. So I got back there and was crying because Ma wouldn't hold me, and Aunt Ada would send me to school with cookies. She'd make cookies, and I remember there were 2 oatmeal raisin cookies, and I put them in you had a big cloakroom. Some son of a bitch ate my cookies, and I was going to go around and smell everybody's breath, and I was prevented from doing that. But that's when I would go around to the window, because Joe and I had a room together that later was Grandpa and Grandma's room, because they switched bedrooms. But I'd go to the window, and Joe would talk to me, and he would say, it was get. He'd say, get, because he was 2. Get this, and oh yeah, we'd sit there and talk, and then that was a limited time. But the day they took the quarantine sign down, Aunt Ada took me someplace. And we drove by the house, and she said, is there anything different about your house? Because I knew that. I tried to get you at one time a quarantine sign just to, but I even contacted the health department in Kent County. They didn't have any. They knew what I was talking about. Okay?
Yep. Oh, yeah.
But anyway, drove by, and I said, no. And Aunt Ada had to look because the sign was still up. So we went down Griggs to Darwin. or not Darwin, but what was the town?
Stafford.
Went up.
Snafford.
Yeah, Snafford. She got cheese ball, but she broke cheese arm.
Yep.
So anyway, we came around again, and by that time the health department had been there and taken the sign down, and then I could go home. So I remember going in the house, and people, because scarlet fever was very, very, deadly, but people had given Joe a lot of toys, and he was playing on the floor with all of these toys. And he was pissed off when I was going to play with some of them. I remember that was not a very welcoming
Well,
feeling.
he thought he was an only child.
The red fire truck in the display cabinet, Aunt Mildred gave me that when I had scarlet fever.
Gotcha.
That's why I kept it.
Yeah, right.
And you ain't getting it back.
I still
You
can't
keep your
play
hands
with it.
off
I
me.
still can't play with it.
No.
What do you remember from having scarlet fever?
Very little. I remember I stayed in their bed all the time.
Yeah.
How old were you?
2 years old.
2.
2.
But I don't remember. I remember going to the window, but I don't remember talking to. But I remember that fire truck, and it had a silver. It was an Aaron Fox, and it had a wooden ball on the
Yep.
pump in the front.
I remember that. I remember
But
that.
that's gone. I lost that, of course.
Chip
But I still have it.
Chip probably stole it.
I did.
No, we had a toy box in the bedroom that was about that square, about that tall, and we used to dig through that for stuff.
Oh yeah. Oh Christ, right.
Everything went into that box, and
Yeah.
it was
It's
just
like-
if you wanted something out of the bottom of it,
churned
it was
it.
that tall, you'd have to dig everything out
Yeah,
Right,
to get it back.
to try
yeah.
and find what you were looking for.
And it was always on the bottom.
Oh yeah,
Always.
yeah.
And I would.
We hadn't seen it in 6 months, so do an inventory.
And I still remember. I still remember being at home and before you were born. I didn't know Ma was pregnant. Didn't know anything about all that shit. But anyway, I remember being in. You had the same baby bed I did. It was a tall bed, and I had the croup, and Ma put had a heating plate, and then she put a pan of water on it, and it boiled dry one night, and Charlie threw the son of a bitch out and was yelling and screaming at Ma. I don't remember that part, but she told me. But anyway, that would glow, and I would jump in my bed, and I could see my shadow against the wall. And one of the nursery rhymes was about I have a little shadow, and however it goes. But anyway, I was watching myself jump, and then Grandma switched my bed to the other side of the room, and I remember her coming in, and I was crying. She said, "What's the matter?" And I said, "I want to sleep on that end." And so Ma got it all fixed up, and then I laid down there and started crying and said, "No, I want to lay on that end." So finally the old man came in and said, that was the last time I had picked an end, so that was the end of it. But I remember, of course, growing up with Joe, but a story that Ma told me, and it's been this way ever since. I was pissed off because he followed me everywhere I went.
Well,
Everywhere. And
With a hatchet sometimes.
well, that's another story.
That's optional.
you never went to the
tell that
theater in Adlock either, did you?
The hatchet depends on how pissed off Joe was.
But anyway, so I came home and I said to Ma, I said, "Ma, I'm tired of it." I said, "He follows me everywhere. If I go to see Tom Dornbos, he follows me." And she said, "Now, Chip," she said, "one day you're going to turn around and wish he was there." So the day he went into the Coast Guard, he took the bus to where you were headed for Detroit.
I went to Detroit on
And so,
Greyhound.
yeah, Greyhound. So I went over and met him at the Lansing depot, bus depot, and we either had coffee or lunch or something. And I walked out of that place, got just a little ways down the street, and turned around and wished he was there. Still do. Jesus, that hurt. But that was Ma.
Well, I remember when your dad's young.
Yeah, no. Such a sad moment. And he had just welcomed spring. Jesus.
Christ, he lived another 20 years. For Christ's sake.
It was a lingering day.
Yeah.
Charlie said,
Some very long
we're
and dragged
standing
out
where the old
A lot of underwear went under the bridge.
we were standing at some kind of a field house or Quonset or some goddamn thing in the middle of the goddamn Crow's Nest Lumber Company, the rain's coming down, the hail. It was hailing, and Joe and I are standing there, and Charlie's over in the corner crying. And he said, "This is where my life ended." Joe said, "Who the hell are we?" And then
Apparently you were just the ride.
we did nothing but piss him off that entire trip.
Absolutely.
First of all, he said, "You guys
It was our
aren't."
job.
Yeah. So first thing he says is, "You guys aren't drinking." So Joe and I got on the plane. We're flying from Detroit, from Grand Rapids to Detroit, and Joe says, "I'll have a drink." So Charlie was sitting over here. He was pissed. So then we flew on into Toronto. I think it was Toronto. Yeah. And Charlie's saying something about, he's saying, "Comment ça va?" Remember, he was, to those French people, he was hollering, "Comment ça va?"
Yeah.
I don't know what the hell. But anyway, Joe, he gets up and he's going like this. Of course, this is Charlie. No, glasses down. He gets up and he says, "I got a fart. I got a fart." Joe says,
Oh.
"Jesus, Dad, don't strain. Whatever you do, don't strain." I think I shit myself. Joe said, "God damn it." So now Joe and I are pretty well pissed about everything. And he's not being very cooperative, and he's like the 40-pound midget. Keep in mind, at the end of the trip, Grandma had broken her leg.
Oh, right. Yeah.
So anyway,
That was an episode.
correct, yeah. We all found out how that started too. But anyway.
Well, I found out before you did.
Yeah, it was Emily told me finally, but
I called home. "Hey, there's a problem up here. Don't tell your dad." "What?" "Ma broke her leg." "Oh, beautiful."
Oh, perfect.
well, you came and
why
told
did
me
she do
we were on the plane. They were trying
Just
to.
to
They
upset
said
him.
something about they would give us money to get off the plane. Said we can't. We've got an emergency in Grand Rapids, and he doesn't know about. Joe's telling me he doesn't know about it. But anyway, we got on the plane to fly from Toronto to Calgary, and then catch the plane from Calgary to Cranbrook. And Joe and I go right
Right to the
Charlie's-
flight deck.
Right. Well, yeah. Well,
That was the
before
name
we
of the
get
bar.
there, we've had about 3 drinks, and Charlie's looking at us like this. I mean, he's up 2 or 3. He wasn't sitting in our row, fortunately.
For him.
So
That was good
So
planning.
we get there and we're tired of them already. And Joe says, "Dad." Charlie, I don't know what you were calling him. We were calling him then. Anyway, Charlie, watch the luggage. Joe and I got to pee, or Chip and I got to pee. So I went around the corner and Joe said, "I think it's that way." So we went down, and there's some gal that's a barkeep. She's got 3 teeth, and most of them in front.
Yeah.
And
sort
so
of.
she's kind of Joe's just putting the charm on her, you know.
Well, yeah.
And Joe and I are watching them load these big cargo planes and all of this shit, and this gal's serving us drinks, and it was his money, so we're drinking it up as fast as we could.
We had an allowance.
So anyway,
last very long.
he demands that we have to go back to where he is. So here he's got all of this shit, and he's just chewing our asses. And then we get on the flight tip. There's not enough time to drink between Calgary and Cranbrook because it's only about
Chicago to Grand Rapids.
right. So, but anyway,
Barely get up in the air.
right. Then Joe's got to drive. Joe's got to do all the driving, and we have to go to Fernie first. And in the night, Joe's got a bed and I've got a bed, and we put Charlie on a rollaway intentionally. So we're laying there, and Joe's right. Joe's laying in bed. And he's laying in his rollaway on this side of me. Joe's on this side of me, and he's going, "Ma, Ma," and I look over, and Joe's got one eye sticking out of the sheet, and it's that big. I thought he was going to get up and slap the shit out of the old man. So the next morning we get up. Oh, Joe, didn't we go? We went looking for a drink or something. No, he was pissed off at us about something.
Well, he went didn't he get up and leave, or he went someplace? He was all.
Oh no,
he
that was
cranked
later.
up.
That was when we got over to the lumber company.
Well, that's where his life ended at the
Well, yeah, well, it almost did.
truck run over him.
But anyway,
He was hit by a log.
So you ain't shit. So he gets us in the morning. We stayed one night in Fernie, I think, or 2. I can't remember, because we had to look at the hotel, the depot, and he was remembering all this stuff. And well, we had to go to the history place too. So anyway,
We went to. Did we go to the mystery spot then?
no, Charlie was in the mystery spot, and I think it was in the middle of his bed. But anyway, all I remember is that he got up in the morning, and he said, "You sons of bitches are old enough to know that when you take a shit in a toilet, you flush it." Joe said, "What are you talking about?" he said, well, somebody took a shit last night and didn't flush it. Joe said, you're the only one who got up and took a shit last night. All right. So that was the last time we ever heard about that.
Yeah.
But it was that
I
kind
don't know
of...
if he washed his hands or not, but he should have.
Right, no.
Certainly should have.
No, crazed almighty.
I don't care if it is salt water.
So then Joe's driving. We're going now to Galway because that's where that... later we went to Caithness Creek. That guy, we went back there to Caithness Creek and saw all of that shit. But anyway, we're at the lumber company, and John, I've got his name written down someplace. John, whatever his name was, Charlie had met when he and Ma were up there.
Yeah.
So anyway, we stopped and we're on our way over. And,
They owned the farm that the lumber company was on.
Yeah, across the way. So anyway, we're driving along, and Charlie's in the back seat saying something or other, and pontificating.
He was looking at the pictures, and he said, "No, this isn't the spot." He was looking at the mountains and holding the picture up, and he couldn't find the driveway. Is what we were looking.
Oh, was that?
Well, he ended up. It was the old lumber company road.
Right. Yeah, right. Yeah,
It was their driveway.
But anyway, Joe said, we're walking, and I said, I'm in the front seat, and I said, well, Dad, don't you mean, trying to correct him for whatever he was saying. And he's in the back seat, and he just flares and says, you sons of bitches, I've forgotten more about this than you'll ever know. And Joe's just, and I'm going.
Well, it was entertaining for him.
Oh, yeah, it was. So then we pull into the lumber company, and we're going to go to John Battaglia. John Battaglia. That was the guy's name.
That was when she got married. They had John Battaglia was there. They marched with John Battaglia.
That's exactly right. They call it the John Battaglia March.
Yes, that's what it was.
But anyway, so John Battaglia, Charlie gets out of the car, he's pissed at us.
That's what I was thinking.
And he just gets out of the car, and I said, are you going in to look for John Battaglia? And he says, no. And so Charlie gets out of the car, and he's pissed off. Oh, God damn, he's walking around the lumber company, and I came out, and Joe's sitting there, and I said, where's the old man? He said, I don't know. I said, well, because I went in and said, Mr. Battaglia, my dad is here. We've got to go get him, because he was wandering around. And then we got to then we went out to the lumber company, and
then we went to the casino.
Right, then we went. No, the Indians took us to the casino. But anyway,
It was a free ride.
right. So
They got their own bus.
right. But it was, and then we go to the Sandman Motel, and the next day we're flying out,
Yeah.
and that's when we find out about Ma. But anyway,
That's
so
so tried to choke the bowl at the sand. He dropped a bowl choker.
that's what he welcomed spring. He welcomed spring.
Yeah.
So
Don't put your foot in there.
right. So Jesus. So we get in there, and I said, he says, Joe and I are looking for something. No, Charlie said, just take me back. I just want to go back to the motel. And I said, okay. So Joe dropped him off, and he said, thanks. And I said, I said, I don't care. He said, I just want to go back to the motel. So that's when we went to the home improvement show.
Yes.
Because that was the only thing going on.
Yeah.
And so we get in the
No beer though.
No, we get in the
Plenty of
home.
doors and windows, no beer.
We get in the home improvement show, and Joe and I are walking around, and there's some guy selling like Pella windows or something. Joe said, are these any good, eh? And I looked at it, and this guy's, well, eh, this is, and Joe says, well, we go to somebody else, and he's talking about, well, eh? And I'm saying, we're going to get killed in this one. And
To be the first tourist killed in
I'm
Canada.
just well, what was that?
Second murder in Canada.
Right.
One right after the other.
Right. So then we get back to the room, and I go into the room, and in the wastebasket is Charlie's long underwear. So I get a coat hanger, scoop it out, and take it out and go to Joe.
Yeah.
And Charlie's pretending he's asleep. He's not really asleep. He's pretending. And so,
bathroom
we know he did. He had to shit when we let him out of the car. But anyway,
he could still run a little bit.
right. Well, do you remember? Right. Only that time you got the middle bed. Charlie got a bed, and I had to sleep on the fucking rollaway. But anyway, we were in the Sandman Hotel, and right on the Canadian Pacific tracks. Trains going by. And Joe and I look out the window, and there's a game going on, and all the townies are standing outside across the right-of-way looking in motel windows. So the train goes by, Joe stands up, zips his fly, and is standing there like that, and I I'm dying. That's how we knew Charlie was
Room
asleep.
3.
Yeah. Right, room 3. Because there were parties going on all over the place. Oh, Christ, what a fucking mess. It was the worst trip I've ever taken, but the most fun we ever had.
God,
Never
again.
Joe said, I will never do this again. And we never did.
No, well, of course not. Why would you?
And then he would,
Charlie died, so.
Right.
Eventually.
Well, he refused to pay for it. So, we had trouble getting money for drinks.
Right. We ran out of drink money. We ran out of drink money.
Day one.
Right. It was a transcontinental trip. We ran out of beer money in Detroit.
Yeah. Liquor got thin between Detroit and Toronto.
Right. I can remember that Joe.
The first leg.
Charlie was looking over his shoulder. He was kind of on an aisle, maybe 4 seats ahead, and it was one of those wide-ass planes.
Yeah, but you could see him.
Yeah, he sat on the end, and he kept looking at us. He's doing this, and Joe's saying to the waitress, stewardess, bringing him back. Charlie's just pissed off. Oh, Christ. It was awful.
Was that the trip you were calling him King on the Point?
No, that
was our
Cass.
trip. No, it wasn't to Cass. It was down to Huntington for the
614.
614, and Joe and Lynn and Bill slept in the camper.
That's when we had the motorhome.
Yeah, whose was that?
Albert Leonard Lawrence.
Yeah, Albert. And
I put a cruise control on it, so he let us use it.
And it was just, and Charlie sat in the front seat, and he'd be up like this, looking out the window, and somebody, yeah, and that's what
He rode
Stallings was.
shotgun all the time.
Yeah, and that was, and we would call him King on the Point because he was up looking at that all the goddamn time. But anyway, Charlie wouldn't sleep in the camper, and he said, "No, Chip and I are going to take the room." Hell, I wanted to sleep with Joe, and that's where the fun was. Sitting there with the old man wasn't all that much fun.
Then how would you know it was spring?
You're right. Bingo. Not only that, I might have to pick it up.
It's his job. He's older.
Right. I was the old one.
He had seniority, so.
But you were asking about the hatchet.
No, he was.
No, Ford was.
Oh, Ford. Yeah, Ford was asking about the hatchet. I used to irritate shit out of him every chance I get. And one time we were on the sofa and I was doing something to him.
How old were you guys?
And just
I don't know.
at this very moment.
I was 10 maybe or less.
Fucking cried.
But I was doing something to him, and he reared back with his leg and with his heel hit me right here and split my lip. And I was expecting Grandma was going to give me all kinds of sympathy, and I went in and she said, "What's him bleeding like hell?" And I said, "Oh, Joe kicked me." She said, "You shouldn't have bothered him." So that was the end of that. And so then we got these. How she got us those hatchets, I don't know.
Or why?
They get us the goddamn thing.
That
But
seems
Flashlights and hatchets.
a
Yeah.
poor choice.
So-
Shoot your
That's
eye
good
out.
child.
Hatches for kids. You
I
probably
worked
kill
with a
each
guy
other.
that his sister
22
lived
is
next door,
12.
and he bought his nephews. He had twin nephews. The first thing, they were about 4 or 5 years old. He bought them nice big jackknives for Christmas. Then he bought them both pellet guns a year later.
Jesus Christ.
Favorite.
I was going to say, right,
Their favorite uncle.
Right,
Boy, she didn't like it. That's funny.
Well, Ma got us, and I don't know if it was for Easter. I don't remember. It wasn't
For
Easter.
Easter.
We'd get roller. You remember we'd get roller
For
skates
Jesus
for
is
Easter?
risen.
Yeah, I got roller skates a couple of
Hey,
times.
your
Yeah.
Easter bonnet and your
Those
hatchet.
Chicago roller skates. But anyway, we had, we would, but anyway, I was pestering Joe again. So Joe got his axe out because he was threatening me, and I was, giving him shit. Ma's in the kitchen. Ma's always in the kitchen doing something. And Joe has had it. All of a sudden, he just takes that sheath off that thing, and he starts after me. Now, I was taller, obviously, than he was. All you could see as I was running around the dining room table is that fucking hatchet. And I knew right where he was. He had it up like this. So, and I'm yelling for Ma.
I had to hit him with it. If he slowed down, I had to hit him.
So
Fastest chips ever run ever.
So
Yeah.
so I finally called Ma, and Ma came in. She said, "He's not going to hit you," but she took it away from him.
Yeah, because
That's
he's
the
not
only
going to hit
reason.
you.
But I was going to say, Joe was telling.
That is hatchet.
How would you like to? This is great. I would grab Joe. We'd be going to the show. I'd grab him like this. This is how we'd walk to the theater.
Went to the theater. They had
up Burton Street. But Joe said, "God damn it!"
Didn't somebody tell you to cut that out and you wouldn't quit?
No, I saw. Well, I
That's
asked
outside
him
the
politely.
church.
Yeah, sure.
Yeah, the church came out.
Right.
Mind your own business.
Oh, then one of the things we used
Jesus made me do it.
on the corner was the Christian Reformed Church, as you may recall. And what we used to do, Joe, if you get Joe pissed, he'd swear. I mean, he'd just stand there, "You son of a cocksucker," yelling and screaming. So I'd get him down on the corner of the church in the summertime, and they had all the windows open. And they're in there singing, and I'd get him down there on the street, and I'd start to tease him. "You son of a bitch! Goddamn you chip, you son of a bitch!" And the window, they'd get up, never say a word to her, just close the window. All the windows were shut, and we
They
get
put air
home.
conditioning in it.
Yeah.
Oh, it was
That
just,
was pre-air. Heck, I can remember air conditioning. The bars at the movie theaters all had neon signs. Air conditioned.
yep.
Air conditioning.
Oh, we thought that.
Like an iceberg, you know.
But you remember,
Oh,
too,
yeah, it was a big deal.
You remember, too, Ma wouldn't let us go to the show in the summer because of the polio?
She wouldn't let us do anything like near water.
Right. And for a while, there was some talk that if you bought milk in a cardboard container, you could get polio. And I remember, so everything was in glass bottles because you could sterilize glass bottles.
Right.
I mean, we had no idea. We couldn't go to the pool. You couldn't go to the show.
There was a couple that lived on Stafford Avenue that had a fish pond in their backyard. It's about that deep, and it was probably 6 feet across. And it was summertime, hot like this, and they put water in that pool, and all the kids in the neighborhood went over to swim in it. And we had to beg to shoot you. That's polio, and you can't go.
No.
But she finally relented. We did go, but it wasn't not too long after that the vaccine came out.
Right. And do you
And
remember?
she ran us.
Yep. You talk about frog march.
Everybody we knew.
Yep.
There was no question.
No.
There was none of this crap that's going on today. We're going. Because iron lungs, the Mary Free Bed Hospital was full of iron lungs. I'll bet you they had 50 of them up there.
Right.
And those kids, some of them.
I don't think you guys have
Iron
ever
lungs are now
met
in museums.
Pat Kelly, he's one of the
Right.
If you can
But
find
Pat
it.
had
I
the
looked it
polio
up
when
not too
since
long
he was
ago.
3, he's in a wheelchair
There
and
was
has
a
no
guy
use
that
of
was
his legs and
66 or 7 years old, was still in an iron lung, and I
Good
think he
Lord.
was the last iron lung patient in the United States at that time.
Yeah.
But he'd had it for 55
Right,
years,
right.
something like that.
Well, Pat
60
Kelly,
years.
Pat Kelly's in his 70s, and he's had it since he was 3 years old.
Oh yeah.
They flew him back. He got it in Europe. They flew him back on a special flight. His father was in the military. Flew him back on a special flight to New York State.
Is he crippled up?
Oh yeah, he's been in a wheelchair all his life.
Okay. Because there's a gal that comes to the club. Her name is Linda. She's a little short gal. She's got braces, and she's a polio victim.
Yeah.
And one of the last I ever saw. And she's got to be in her late 60s.
No, but
We
got,
talked about one time is,
Well, Ma had us vaccinated from the very earliest time.
oh yeah.
And the
She
sulfur.
always stayed up with that.
Well, and you remember sulfur drugs? Sulfur drugs were just coming out, and my cousin, our cousin Jack Pangborn, who was 10 years older than I. He was born in 31, and but Jack had in the late 30s. They were out at Lake Michigan, and they brought their picnic, and they were skipping. I mean, they were washing the plates with sand and then kind of skipping them to rinse and dry. I mean, but anyway, something broke and cut Jack's leg, and he was one of, I believe they said he was one of the first people that had the sulfur drug in Grand Rapids, or he was in the early batch, and had it not been for the sulfur drug, he could have gotten an infection and died, because that was, and then Jack later succumbed to cancer.
Lymphosarcoma. But he had
What was it?
lymphosarcoma.
Oh, nasty.
He had he died in what, 48?
I think so.
But I can remember seeing him laying on Mildren's front room on Hoyt Street, laying on the floor on his back with his feet in the couch.
Yep.
And he had a hole underneath his arm. They'd taken lymph nodes out, and it never healed.
No, that's exactly, and that's where the tumor was. And I remember Thora Jorgensen told me, Thora was in my class,
Right.
and this is before she died. She died last year, but she was telling me, I said, do you remember Jack Pangborn, Don's brother? And she said, oh yes. She said we could hear him scream during the night.
Oh yeah.
And
He was in misery.
yeah, but
Kid.
Painful.
and do you remember going to the funeral?
I remember the funeral. I remember seeing him in the casket. That's
Yep.
the second time I remember seeing him. He was
Yep.
in the casket.
And
Because I think Charlie carried me up there.
Yep, he would have. And I remember they put Jack's diploma under his pillow in the casket.
He graduated from South in
And
the hospital.
and we came, yeah, exactly. We came out. We came into the funeral home, and Don was going out, and he was kind of excited, and he was running. He said, "I'm going down." Was it Walgreens, the drugstore down on the corner of Division and Burton? Loveland's drugstore. He was going down to Loveland's because they'd given him 10 cents or a quarter to buy a soda or something. He didn't invite us to go with him. I mean, he just ran. So, which we were, and of course, it was just very sad because all of the sisters, I mean, Aunt Mildred and Uncle
Yeah, that
William were
affected the whole family.
Yeah, they were, it tore it.
imagine.
Well, the first question that Frank and Ralph asked me at Tom's wedding, I think, or Tom's wedding, or whenever first time we'd seen them together in Grand Rapids, they said, "Did the family ever complain because we weren't here for Jack's funeral?" And I said, "No, I never heard a word about it."
No.
I mean, that would not have been a factor. But anyway, I remember walking in, and Aunt Mildred and Uncle Lynn were just devastated, obviously. And then Grandpa and Grandma Pangborn were sitting in the front, and Grandpa Pangborn was weeping, and then Asher and Matey were sitting there. And then I don't think I remember when they came for the funeral, the family car drove up, and Doug Holben was, I don't know how old he was.
He was 1. He's a year younger than I am.
Is he? Well, all right, so he would have been whatever you were in 48.
Was 4.
All right, he would have been 3, but the funeral cars had purple flags like they still do,
Yeah.
and he wanted a flag because the family car pulled up for Aunt Mildred and Uncle Lynn to get in.
Right.
But one of the things that I wanted to conclude with in that rather sad episode of the family is the fact that Don said one time to his mother, Aunt Mildred told me this. He said to her, "Why didn't you share?" He said, "I had no idea my brother was that sick. I had no idea that he was going to die. They never shared a thing." And Aunt Mildred said, "It just isn't anything that we thought we should do."
Mm-hmm.
But Don said, it didn't, because he didn't feel that he had a chance to grieve.
Yeah.
And
Well, he was 10 or 11 years old when Jack died.
He was
Yep.
certainly old enough.
Yeah.
yeah, and so, it wasn't. But those were the times that changing. And I still remember when Aunt Mildred passed away. I really felt that the Holden family was invincible because here Aunt Jessie died in 25, Grandma died in 35. Sarah Jane. All right, so now from 35, so I'm born in 41. We get to, and then Jack passed away, but it's still there's all the Holdens. And they get then in 1968, the year you were born, she passed away in May, and you were born in July.
Yeah.
But Maureen and Shannon had met her, but I went to Hamburger Heaven was the name of the place to get hamburgers, because I got home and Terry said they called and Aunt Mildred died, and I was just lost it and was just in a trance. And Grandpa Charlie is what big an asshole as he was. I was pondering this because I'm thinking they're invincible, but they're going to live forever.
Right.
Keeping in mind, of course, that Aunt Ada Uncle Lynn and Aunt Mildred's 25th wedding anniversary, all the girls were lined up, or all the kids were. There was Marty and Connie and everybody was lined up, and the girls are looking at this picture and they're saying, "Well, now, who's going to die next?"
Yeah.
So there's
Whose turn is it now?
right. Whose turn? I mean that, but
Yeah.
that because this is the way they talk. It was just not.
Well, Asher died in 53.
Yep. Yep.
He was
at
the first-
82.
And then it was from 53 till Aunt Mildred.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And then Frances died the year after that.
Yep.
She died.
almost
Frances
a year.
died in 69 because Sharon and I and Jennifer, we went from Baltimore to Columbus on the way home from service.
Oh,
And
okay.
we stopped there, and Conrad had called, and I think she died the day or before. We were in Baltimore when they both died.
Yeah.
When Aunt Mildred and Aunt Frances?
Yeah, well,
So they died
Mildred
within-
died in I think it was
68.
68.
Yep. 68.
We come back.
'Cause
That's
that's
the
your-
year
yeah.
we come back from McMurdo, and we got the phone call. I was home, and we got the phone call on Mildred, and then Frances died just a year later, because we got back in like late May or early June in 68, something like that. It was in early. Then when we went to, I think we knew Francis died when we got to Columbus, but Emily was talking with Conrad. They were having they were talking they were all talking back and forth, but it was, I know that Francis died in 69.
Yeah. I know that because it was not quite a year.
May. She died in May, like early May 20,
right,
22nd or so, May 22nd or 23rd of May in 69. Because I got out.
And Aunt Mildred died in May because we sent.
I was home from the trip. So.
We sent Mother's Day cards to all of. When we send Mother's Day card from the house. Yeah, there's going to be a bus wreck up there next. I mean, that's what we're working on. Right, but anyway,
Your short bus is here.
Grace, I was going to tell you something, and I can't remember what it was. Oh, anyway, I was lamenting the fact that Aunt Mildred died, and Grandpa said to me, "Look, Chip," he said, this, and he always told us, never be afraid of a new experience, even if it's dying, and it's all natural. But when it kind of hits, you say, you feel like you've been singled out. So but he said, we're sitting at Baptist Lake, and he said, Chip, if all the people on that side of the lake died all at once, that would mean, that would be something to be worried about. But he said, people, these are and he said, so, it's just normal, which of course I knew. But you're in denial.
As you age, your attitude changes.
Right. Oh,
you get more complacent. It's. I'm closer than you are, and you're closer than he is.
Right. So
don't make any bets.
With any luck.
We hope.
You keep monkeying.
There he is, flopping around over there. Right behind.
That's one of those inchworm things.
No, that's one of.
But anyway, Connor took care of that.
Yeah, Connor got that. Connor, you wrangled that well. You
big
did a
game
good
hunter.
job wrangling. Big game.
He's a beetle wrangler.
So what was it like when they would get together? The Holdens
just
when
as
you were
like
little?
he and I.
Yeah,
the girls would. Every fall they would go to the farmers market. There'd be Ada and Amy and Annis and Ada.
Mildred.
And Mildred. They'd all go to the farmers market and buy peaches, tomatoes, pears, and then they'd can. They'd go to somebody's house, get Ada's or Ennis's, and then they can for the whole day. They can all day. They used to do permanents together. They get together, do permanents.
Yep.
Yeah.
And they
stink like ammonia. The whole
the house. But what they do is they
smoke ammonia. They all smoke.
Smoke ammonia and coffee.
Yeah, coffee.
Black.
Yeah. Nobody in the Hoban family drank coffee with cream and sugar.
Nope.
Nobody.
The first time
they couldn't afford it during the Depression, so they just drank it black, and that's the only way I never. All of them.
As a matter of fact,
I don't drink coffee with anything in it either.
I don't either.
It's just the way it is, and I don't drink. A cup a day maybe.
Well, the first time I had coffee, all the girls, and they used to call themselves the girls.
The girls are coming.
The girls sat down and they were having coffee, and I walked into the kitchen, and it was a tiny kitchen. It had a porcelain table just like in Christmas Story, and chairs were similar. There were 4 chairs. Joe and Ma sat on that side, and Charlie and I sat on this side. So somebody was in the chair getting their perm. Someone was giving the perm. So that meant that of the 4 of them, 2 were standing, and that meant there was a chair, maybe 1 chair left. So I sat down. They said, "Chip, would you like some coffee?" And I said, "Oh yes, I'd like some coffee." So they poured, because the pot's running all the time. Those days it was percolator, and Ma had a gas stove there, so they perk away there, and she poured me some coffee, and I said, do you have any sugar or milk? And Ma said, "Chip, we don't use that. If you want that, you can go get it." Never again. Drank my coffee black and still do.
She'd wait on you if you really want to, but not with coffee.
No, not until you get that yourself.
Yeah.
Do you remember Ma'd get finished in the kitchen? Grandma'd get finished in the kitchen, and when the light was off, she was done in the kitchen.
Yeah.
Well, she hated to clean the stove.
Oh, did she?
The oven. Oh, yeah. She just detested oven cleaning. And Sharon talks about it yet today. We'll take care of that tomorrow.
Yeah.
We'll clean the stove.
Yep.
Right.
Brown.
Wasn't going to have any of that while the family was there.
Right.
Putty knife.
Well, do you remember the old kitchen at all?
Yeah,
when,
sure.
When Ma had that.
The telephone, yeah. I know
The
the
telephone
cupboards,
was over in the corner,
sink was by the
floor to
window.
ceiling.
Yep.
And then the stove was a gas stove that had a high oven on it, and then a
Yep.
shelf. Then there was
30 style.
right.
Style
And then,
gas.
and then
range,
between that was, you remember what I think used to be a ironing board closet
Yep.
where Ma kept her spices, and then
Yep.
she had a sink that's just like the one in Christmas Story.
Yeah, it's got a drain board about that wide
Right.
with the sink.
Right, nothing underneath. And as a matter of fact,
Well,
she-
plumbing.
Yeah, right, plumbing.
It wasn't nice.
She was,
Well, that was a cistern. Yeah.
I was.
We drank out of it.
I was at. I was.
That's where they made coffee out of it.
I was at that sink, and Ma was nursing you.
Ooh.
And I was doing something at the sink, and Ma came running in, and she had her boob out, and she said, "Chip, get out of the way," and she squirted me. And you know,
Oh,
I
that's
was
a rude
kinda,
awakening.
well, you know, I don't know what
Hello.
was going on, but you know, Joe. But then she had to get back to Nurse Joe, but you know, he'd start to cry, and milk lets down, and
Yep.
that's what happened with Terry and I went to the store.
I start to cry in
Right, your bag lets down.
Well,
Mine
little
does.
GD sets in.
Oh,
I was going to tell you, we were after you were born. Ma and I went for the first time to the theater in Lansing, and I don't know what we were seeing. And so we were sitting there, and you know, Lucy Schmidt said she would take care of you, and so it was our first time out. And we got to the theater, and in the theater, as part of the production, baby cries. Ma's milk let down. We had to go home.
never saw the end of the movie.
Movie's over. Or the beginning.
Or the beginning, yeah.
Our grandpa Holben lived on LaBelle Street,
Yeah.
Asher, Charles Asher, and he was an old farmer. He was born in 1873, something like that.
1870, I think.
Well, anyway, he chewed tobacco. He wore suspenders and work pants, and always it's all he wore.
Lindsay Woolsey shirt, Lindsay Woolsey trousers,
And he had
suspenders.
he chewed Peerless tobacco,
God, I couldn't. Yeah, I could.
and he chewed that until the flavor was gone, and then he put it in a cigar box, and on top of he had a wood stove, Arcola wood stove that they heated water with. They didn't have a hot water heater; they heated water with the stove, and it had a water jacket around it. So he'd dry that tobacco in that cigar box, and then he'd put that tobacco in a pipe and smoke it.
Yeah.
So he got
he got his money for it.
well used.
Yeah.
But the kids, he'd be in the kitchen. We always were in the kitchen anyway. We only went to the dining room to play a little bit or have supper. Other than that, you didn't go in the rest of the house.
Yeah.
Or chase each other with hatchets.
Yeah.
Right.
And so I can remember, we're sitting on his lap or sitting next to him, and he's smoking his pipe, and all the grandkids wanted to smoke that pipe.
Right.
And he'd let you have a hit on it, and I took it was like sucking on a blowtorch. Holy shit! It's like, it was spit and
Right.
Yeah,
There
oh
was,
God!
right. There were stems and seeds and everything.
And he always had, a little tobacco juice in the corner of his mouth.
Yeah.
A little brown stain running there.
And the picture of him in there on the piano.
3-4 day beard.
Right.
Always.
Well, but one of the things that I used to do too is when the girls, we were talking about the girls, and they would sit and talk, and that's where I learned a lot of the history of the family because you'd sit there and listen. And I remember it was Grandpa died in '53, and it had to be he had dementia, and he had broken a hip, and that's what got him hospitalized. And then he was at home. Matey took care of him during the night, and the girls would come in all during the day. So Grandma didn't work at that time, but neither did Mildred or Amy or Ada. So they would come down and take shifts. And but anyway, the last time he played his violin, he was sitting and it was on LaBelle Street, and there was a stairway that went up, and then it went up. So there was kind of an alcove, and he had a chair there. And one of the girls said, "Pop, play your violin." Oh, he said, "I don't know where it is." And Matey said, "I know where it is." So she went and got it, and it was in the dining room. Had kind of a cupboard that went out over the basement stairs, and you'd call it well, I don't know what they put in there, but she had a linen closet in there too of some sort. But anyway, she brought it out, and Doug's got the fiddle.
Oh, does he?
And there was there was rattlesnake rattles in it, because that's whenever he'd kill a rattlesnake on the farm, he'd take the rattles and put them in this violin. So he sat there, and of course he's 80 years old. Who else is 80? But I don't play the violin. So anyway, he was sitting there, and he started to play, but he couldn't quite get it fingered, and he was going to play. They wanted him to play the Devil's Dream, and he couldn't get it. He got it started, but he never finished it. And then they said, "Well, Pa, how about the Irish Washerwoman?" And so, it's, did you ever walk into an Irishman's shanty? That's the way Ma used to sing it. Did you ever walk into an Irishman's shanty where water was scarce and whiskey was plenty, a three-legged stool and a table to match, and a button hung up on the door for a latch? Now, if you read the words, the words don't come out that way, but that's the way Ma always sang it. But so he started to play it, and I remember sitting there. There was Joe and Don and Tom and I, and then on the sofa would be the girls, and then Uncle Lynn was there, Uncle Hank had to be there, Charlie was there, and they'd set, you remember the radiator, our coal radiator, they'd set on top of that too, and Matey sat in her chair, but they were all kind of around that room. As Joe said, you were either in the kitchen, you were all in the living room. So he played it, and so, about 10 years ago, there was a bluegrass thing at Rio Grande College, and the fiddler was sitting there, and I said, "Do you know how to play the Devil's Dream?" "Oh, hell yes," he said, "I know how to play that." And I said, "Could you play that?" So he picked up the fiddle and he started to play it, and all of the notes Asher couldn't find, he found. And I said, "Thank you." I said that the last time I heard that attempted was my grandfather in 1953, and he was too old and couldn't do it. But that's how we would sit, because these stories would go on during the permanence, and do you remember this happening, and do you remember Uncle Mel doing this, and do you remember Uncle Ode doing that, and do you remember Ma saying this? And
they always talked about the best Christmas they ever had during the Depression.
Yep.
They all took catalogs, and you could pick anything you wanted out of the catalog.
You get whatever you wanted for
and
Christmas.
Then they'd cut it out of the catalog, and that's what you got for Christmas. They got the picture. I want a piano. They'd cut the picture of the piano.
And they said it was
wrap it up. And that was your gift.
Ma said it was.
Because they didn't have any money.
Ma said it was the best Christmas
they ever had. Guys, they got fur coats and all kinds.
Oh man, they had fur coats. They had cars. But the trick was not so much that that was, as Ma said, it was the Christmas we got everything we wanted.
Yeah.
And
whatever you wanted.
Right, whatever you wanted.
Make any difference.
And they would wrap them up really nice, so they'd be all under the tree, and it looked like there was about 10,000 presents under it, because you got 9 kids around. Well, it would have been. Well, it could have been Jesse. Could have been alive. But Ma also told the story about the best year Asher ever had on Lone Oak Farm was strawberries. And Ma said that the strawberry crop was so good that Grandma sat down and they had a Sears Roebuck and what was the other? Montgomery Ward. You could order anything you wanted from that catalog.
Oh, wow.
So, and they never had much, but then they went out of business. As a matter of fact, I've got it in there if I can remember it. I've got a copy, or I've got a copy, not a copy, but an original copy of the auction for the Lone Oak Farm.
Oh yeah.
And
did the engine sell? Did the traction engine sell?
I can't remember. It's more general, like farming equipment and that sort of thing. I don't remember, but we can take a look at it if I can. It's in one of those boxes in there. But that's what just like we're doing now is what we used to do is sit and listen to them talk. But there's 2 of us. We're and keep in mind we're the last of the Rogers. Everybody is gone. Aunt Maureen's kids are gone.
I'm sorry, what? Did your life just end today?
Yeah. What?
We've been through this before.
Yeah.
This is sounding familiar. Yeah.
But I mean, when you stop to think about
Don't be redundant,
without
Charlie.
Right. Without Aunt Maureen and Aunt Ruby and their families, their kids are gone.
Yeah. They're all gone.
Yep.
We used to, they'd sit around the table.
You talking about the Holbens? No.
Yeah, and they, you're always making fun of each other, whatever. And then somebody would get a piece of paper and a pencil out, and they'd draw pictures. Well, they'd be drawing a picture, and show it around. Then somebody would draw pictures. One hair with a bow and it crossed out. Just big ears. That was their entertainment. I can remember them talking about
they used to go to Charlie said we used to go to the Holbins because they had a piano.
Yep.
And they played the piano and sang
Grandma,
and danced
Grandma
and
courted.
cooked fudge on the gaslight.
Oh, I didn't.
Because during the Depression, there was no place to go. You didn't have any money.
Right.
So they'd get a quarter and put it in a gaslight, put a pan on the
Oh, all right.
gaslight burner and make fudge. And Uncle Connie's going to high school, and these people are 20 people in the room raising hell, dancing and having a big time, and he's over there studying.
Yeah. Yeah.
Charlie said, I don't know how he could do it.
Right.
So he went to college, he was an engineer, but he sat to study, and everybody else was having fun, and he was doing schoolwork.
Yeah.
Yeah.
He and Uncle Martin both were Phi Beta Kappa, I believe.
Yeah.
But they had the Rogers. See, this is what we were exposed to. The Rogers. Keep in mind, Grandpa didn't like his mother, and kept saying she should have adopted us out. And one day I said to him, your mother, your mother never asked you for a dime. Your mother never asked you to drive her any place. Your mother, doesn't bother you at all.
She doesn't call you on the phone.
No. And I got to know my grandmother, Mabel Yarnell Rogers Whitboth, when we were living in. I was moved to Lansing.
You were in Lansing.
And she was there for a Spanish-American War vet auxiliary meeting. A big deal in the state, and all of her girlfriends were there. I mean, they were all in their 80s or 70s. So I went over and bought a bottle of wine. I had to be 21. Went over to the motel. Can't remember the name of it. Used to know, but it almost came to me. But anyway, went over there, knocked on her door, and she answered the door. And I said, Grandma, and she was old as Chip, and I gave her the wine. And she said, girls, my grandson is here. Come on in, Chip. Well, these old ladies are running around with their slips and their bras on, and they're saying, and she said, don't let that, he's my grandson, don't let that bother you. So they're all sitting around in their underwear drinking wine. But that's when I got to know her. And Charlie was always bitching and
Saggy sisters with it.
Saggy baggy sisters. But anyway, but Joe and I, we never got Christmas gifts from Mabel because Charlie wouldn't allow it. And I remember going up to see Mike and Tony Musser, and they had oil paint sets, and it was Christmas time, and Joe and I were, and Grandma gave those to us. Well, what we got, do you remember that gift we got from Aunt Ruth? That was my grandmother's sister. She was Lebanese. But anyway, it was a thing that you would spin like this.
It was a siren cone or something.
Yeah, and it was
two cones put together with you twisted
with a string.
It's a circus act toy.
Exactly. So anyway, Aunt Ruth delivers it. That's all we get. I mean, that's the only thing we got. Nobody else gave us anything from there because we thought they didn't like us. We found it was Charlie didn't like them. But anyway, so we're sitting there, and Joe and I decided that we're going to find out what the hell Aunt Ruth gave us. So we were real clever. We did it real cleverly. Got it out of the wrapping and played with it. Ma was somewhere, and we're playing with the thing. Christ, we put it all back together. Well, Christ, we couldn't put it back together any more than it had been tied on either end. We'd broken this and torn it. And boy, Christmas.
Very clever.
Oh yeah, and Ma found out about it. Ma came in and saw that, and she was pissed at us because that was supposed to be a surprise for you at Christmas, and Aunt Ruth got that for you, and blah 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 blah. And we'd already played with it.
Yeah. None of us could. I never could run the damn thing right in.
You gave it a good go.
I'm surprised we didn't have it broke.
You fixed it.
But we never had, the Rogers never got together like that.
No.
Because it was usually a fight when they got together. But.
So, what about the first cousins for you all? And, were they always at the events?
Wait, which side of the family now?
The Holden side.
Oh, the Holbins, yeah. When they would come, I remember Todd and Kim and Karen and Jane would come from New Jersey. And they would arrive in Grand Rapids, and Jane would go to her Aunt what's her name? Uncle Mark, Aunt Carol's sister's house.
Pearl. No, that was the mother.
Annie
Pearl.
Jack's.
Annie Jack, yeah.
Went to Annie Jack's house. Yeah. And so we didn't see her. And Karen, you never were certain because she sometimes was religious and sometimes she wasn't.
Right.
But Joe and I and Todd and Kim would sit in the backyard and tell every dirty story we had heard since the last time we had been together. we'd sit out there, and there'd be one right after the other, one right after the other, and that went on until the last time Todd and Kim came to town. They drove in from California, and then later Kim was killed in a car accident.
Yeah, you got killed a year after. That was in 1963.
Was that one?
No,
I don't remember.
63 or 64.
But and then of course Tom and Don were like brothers. They were always at our house. However, we did. Tom and I got into some really big trouble at Christmas because we got Joe to throw building blocks into the Christmas tree and break the balls. And we sat there and of course Joe's what 2, and he threw one. And it broke a ball, and of course we thought it was funny. So he threw another one. Next thing you know, he's got the tree pretty well cleaned off. And Ma and Amy are sitting in the kitchen having coffee, and sure as hell came in, and we caught hell, and Tom wasn't going to be allowed to come to the house, and it was just, and Joe got off scot free.
Yeah.
It was Tom and I that
I had a
caught it.
plan.
Yeah, you had a plan.
I knew where I was going.
Right.
Tell the story about the bear. When Don and
Oh Jesus! That was Wabas's leg, and Joe was there's a lot of stories about Wabas's, but I'll tell the bear first. Tom and Don used to tease me, and so and of course you're up there and you got shorts on, and so we're going to go to the top of the hill behind the cabin, and there was a bear den around there, and there was no bears in it, but you could see it easily. You remember you drive in and you see Charlie'd say, there's a bear den. So I was walking up the hill. They were saying, come on up, let's go to the top of the hill. So we got about halfway up, and they said, bear, run! And I turned around and I ran down that hill as fast as I could go, right through the briar bushes. And I tell you, I was nothing but, lines and stabs, and boy, did they catch hell for that. Never had that happen. Oh, Christ, I went right through those briars, because you had to kind of pick your way through, but when you're going downhill and the bear's chasing you, you go real fast. And they dug a septic tank, and there were green frogs down the bottom of it. And Joe fell in, and I was scared to death those frogs. And Joe was down, of course he was little, and he didn't get hurt, and it wasn't a 40-foot hole. But
I don't remember doing it.
I do. I remember that hole, and I remember you in it. But do you remember we'd stay overnight, and that had a tin roof on it.
Yep.
And Joe and I would lay in bed, and Tom Prose always slept in our room, and he would tell stories. We'd get him to tell stories, and it was usually about somebody named Poopy and Pee-Pee or something. And we just laugh our asses off. But there were no ceilings in the place, so on the other walls you could hear Amy and Hank, Mildred and Lynn, everybody chatting, because they talk until late into the evening. We were in bed by 7 or 9, but when the rain would come down, it would hit that tin roof, and you'd just lay there, and it was just absolutely spellbinding. But also, Tom and Don would. Tom had a dog, French bulldog, same age as Boots. I think they may have been litter mates.
It's a Boston Bull.
Yeah, was it Boston?
Yeah.
Boston.
It's a Boston Terrier, yeah.
Boston Terrier, and his name was Brownie. And Brownie, they would let me hold the leash, but Tom said, don't let him get near the cow pies. Because he'd get near a cow pie and lay on his back and just...
Oh, God. The fresher the better.
Yeah, and there'd be cow shit from one end of that dog to the other. So
Amy would get pissed, take him to the lake.
Right, so I was supposed to be watching him, and I'm standing around, and all of a sudden I look down and Brownie's right in the middle of a fresh pie. And I started to laugh. Well, Tom and Don were just pissed at me. Because they were herding cows, because we had seen a lot of cowboy movies. They're herding cows. So the end result is that, and so we bring it back, and Amy is pissed. So, as just like Joe said, Amy took Brownie down to the end of the dock, and you can hear her gagging and washing the dog. And so that was the last time I was allowed to watch Brownie. But do you remember riding? Yeah, do you remember riding the running board when we go there?
Sitting on the 35 Ford, we sat on the fender and held on the headlight.
Yeah, or you'd stand on a running board.
Well, the headlight stuck up off the fender,
yeah.
So he'd let us sit on the fender, and then I'd hold the headlight.
Right, or you could stand.
Ma was shitting her pants.
Oh yeah, well he drove very slow. If you fell off, he was. Well, she did all the time.
It was all sand anyway. So.
Another question that I had is like the trains and how Grandpa introduced you to the trains and
That's all he
took you to
talked
the rail
about.
yard.
That's all I talk about. Well, we got to remember, he said,
You guys with the circus?
well, yeah, right.
Oh,
Do you remember that one?
Yeah, I went to the circus with Kenny Smith.
Right. Yeah. Well, yeah, and Ma was mad.
Yeah,
'Cause
well, we weren't supposed to be at the circus.
No.
We weren't even 6 years old. We were down at the
Yeah,
circus.
and you know why we weren't supposed to be down there? Because the
gyps.
bulldozer.
Yeah, the gypsies would get you. or something.
Well, there was that. They threatened us for
Ready
that.
kill
But
a lot.
Ma was worried that we'd get run over by a dozer in the tall grass because they had reported, it had been in the news, probably in some time during her lifetime, the children playing in the tall grass. Or no, got one of the roustabouts taking a nap in the tall grass, the bulldozer ran over it. And Ma was certain that was us. But anyway, the trains were a part of our lives forever.
We always looking at trains. Charlie, we went to a town. We looked for Railroad Street
Yep.
and then take
Depot Street.
Just go look at the depot or see what was going on.
We were in
We spent a lot of time in railroad yards.
Yeah, we were
just looking.
right. We were at the New York. We were in Grand Rapids. We were in the Pensy Yards, Hugert Yard. We were at New York Central Roundhouse. We were at the Union Station. We were at the C&O Yards. And then, of course, as steam faded out, then we went to the north end, and that was Grand Trunk. So, don't fall asleep. But
and so that led to trips to oh wait, tell the circus story.
oh well, we were.
Yeah, do tell
it
that.
was in Indiana, and we once again we were stopping every place we could get, and but those times they had boarding houses. So I told this story to Tim Barnes, and I thought he was going to die. But anyway, so we'd gone into a town. Ringling Brothers, or one of the circuses, had just left town, and left a lot of people pissed. And because they ran out without paying their bills. So, and you drive down the street and it would say boarding house. So you just stop and or what do they call it? Tourist home. So they stopped and we went up to the door and there's Ma, and Ma was coming down with a sick headache. So we're at the tourist home and they ring the doorbell, and the lady comes to the door and we're standing there and she said. Charlie said, we need a room for the night. There's 4 of us. And she said, are you people with the circus? Well, I told this to Tim Barnes, and you could see Ma with big feet and Charlie with a clown nose. I mean,
He almost
red wig.
fell out
Yeah.
of his chair.
Charlie, because of course we didn't look like we were the circus. He was just asking. But anyway,
Charlie looked like you.
well, Charlie
was with us.
I was just going to
Yes.
say, Charlie, the
Until
fucking
they
ears
kicked
sticking
him
out. What did you used to say? He looked like a taxi cab coming down the street with the doors open.
Yeah.
But anyway. We got it, and I had to shit. So we go up, and it's one of these bathrooms,
Oh, nice.
and there's a tub in there, because, bathrooms were big. And so we're in there, and I'm sitting on the can, and Charlie said, I'm trying to take a shit in front of an audience. And you
learn how to do that.
Right.
After a while, you learn how to
Joe's sitting there, I remember Joe sitting there kind of like this. Charlie is pissed. When was the last time you shit? Was it a month ago? And he said, it smells like hell in here. He's got a piece of string that he's lit the end of, and it's burning. So you got the smell of burning string. You got
It's
shit
just
trying to
terrible.
shit. I probably got a hemorrhoid on me about like that. And every time. Well,
I'm right, Chris. I thought I was shaking hands every time I wiped my ass.
Well, that's what the old
Man.
right? Christ Almighty, yeah, that was. But the trains, that was that. And again, we were down in Indiana looking for trains.
So was the slap story?
Oh Christ!
The what?
Remember we were in Plainfield, Illinois,
Yeah.
looking at Wagner Locomotive Works,
Yeah.
and Joe and Charlie and I are in the restaurant, and
Pounding down the road.
Oh, yeah.
and this
I
lady.
thought I was going to choke to death.
Joe swallowed a quarter of his hamburger without chewing.
Aspirated.
Christ.
Aspirated.
Oh,
Mouthful. God, it was awful.
we're sitting there.
Left
Choked
long.
to death.
We are sitting there in the place, it's a restaurant. You got a little busy things
It's like
going.
like the restaurant that they drink beer in, and with the lion, the little kid on the farm with the
Oh, I know what you're talking about.
They had the airplane into the brothers that had.
Oh yeah, secondhand lions.
Yeah.
That restaurant bar they were in, where you get in the big fight.
Yep.
That's the,
Same?
That was what we were in, just
Okay.
like that.
Same thing.
Right.
So
Same thing.
anyway, we're sitting there and we've had hamburgers, and I can't remember if we've seen the guy yet or we're still waiting to see him. Doesn't matter because we went to Wagner Locomotive Works. But anyway, we were sitting there, and all of a sudden you hear a slap. Slap. And Joe's sitting across from Charlie and I, and Charlie's sitting on the end, so Joe's back to the door. And this guy, it's a woman who is walking, but she's got a foot problem of some description, maybe drop foot, I don't know. But it's just slap. Charlie said, here
She went by. She was going to the can or something. She went by.
Well, she had her husband or boyfriend, and Charlie remarked how proud he was of her, and you could hear her come. And Charlie said, I guess you could call that pounding down the trail. And Joe is, he's turning blue. He's and
I almost need the hind.
I can't get up. I mean, I've dissolved. And everybody in the restaurant knows the lady because she comes in there all the time.
She's regular.
She's a regular. You gotta go.
Yeah.
Right.
You guys gotta get out of here.
Oh, it was awful. Yeah, we almost lost Joe there. Right, Shauna.
That was where his life almost ended.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, right, exactly, in that
Anger.
restaurant.
Well, Charlie had we had a bunch of, I don't know, he started picking up land. He'd pick up anything, but he had a bunch of lanterns.
Most of which are in the basement.
And they didn't know he wanted to light one, but we didn't know what to put in it. He said, I know what to put in it. He went down and he said they got this stuff at the shop where he worked at Blackmer Pump. He came back with I don't know what the hell it was. And he put it in it. They're kerosene hand lanterns, but he didn't know that.
Right.
And he put that stuff in half a dozen of those lanterns. You'd light them up and they'd smoke. You could hardly keep it lit.
I remember that.
Oh,
It smelled like hell, too.
Oh, it was awful. I don't even know what the hell it was.
We finally had.
Oh, it's kerosene. We had to wash them all back. We washed them all out, threw all the cotton batting away, and then I started getting interested in lanterns. I mean.
Yeah, you were selective.
Yeah, well, I learned in a hurry. Yeah. You learn in a hurry when you make those poor purchases.
Right.
You make 2 or 3 of those and go, I shouldn't have done that.
Right. Well, Joe's always saying he'd say to me, you and your fucking paper. You got to get hardware. And I remember I bought a whistle. We were we went to see Marty and Karen. There was a flea market.
Ann Arbor. We went to an antique flea market thing in Ann Arbor. It was artsy craftsy thing.
Right. And I bought a little whistle about that big, and I got that. And Joe said, I think I need to have that. I said, okay. So then I went up to Fred Steck's, bought a whistle one day.
Yep.
And
I got that.
Joe says
Georgia Northern.
Yeah, Georgia Northern. Joe says, I think I need that. I mean, whatever he needed, didn't matter what it was. If it was something he wanted, and I had. He said, I think I need that. And that's Jesus Christ.
Oh,
they're back again.
So when
what did we order?
Can you tell the Fuller Brush story?
Aunt Emily's Fuller Brush.
The girls.
Yeah.
Well, that's at Aunt Ada's house. Yeah.
No, it was at Ma's house.
Was it?
Yeah,
But they did a Fuller Brush man in one house, and they did another guy in Ada's house too.
Well, at our house, all the girls were there, and Grace Irway. Grace Irway was because Grace Irway liked to be with the girls. So they're in there, and Ma had, you remember the front windows, and went on the porch. So comes a knock at the door. They're all there. I was not there. This is a story related to.
Oh, it's just the women were there.
Yeah, just the women were there. So anyway, knock on the door. And Aunt Emily runs to the window and looks out. Somebody looks out, and of course, she knew it was a Fuller Brush man, whatever it was, whatever they were selling. And Aunt Emily yells, I get to fuck him first. And this guy comes in the house, and of course the girls are just going fucking nuts, and this guy is nervous. Now, that chair in there, Ma had that, we always called it her good chair. Ma's chair sat right by the front door. And that guy came in and kind of slid his ass in and sat down. Of course, he's got this room full of women. He thinks he has hit a gold mine. And so he's real nervous about it. because he's already heard Aunt Emily.
Yeah.
So
She was up visiting from
Right,
Columbus.
right.
That's why they were all together.
and they put the pressure on this guy. I mean, this guy was most uncomfortable, and they're winking at him. And they're just doing every fucking thing. And so this guy leaves, but he's in such a hurry to leave. He leaves his briefcase. So he has to come back, and they're waiting for him. They didn't take it out. He had to come back in the house. But Aunt Emily said, "I get to fuck him first." And Grace Irway laughed till she never heard anything like it. But that's the way they would be. It would be just
About what year was this? Like,
oh Christ,
1940s?
I was
In the
no,
mid to
early
late 50s.
Yeah, because I was in Joe and I were older. We weren't home, so we weren't at school either because she only came during the summer. But that was the Fuller Brush Man.
So I was going to request one more story.
I was going to say, do you remember the ice cream one?
Sure.
Do you remember the kid that was coming up the ding-a-ding-a-ding-a-ding?
Eskimo pie guy.
Yeah, Eskimo Pie Guy comes in from Greg Street, comes up, you're going up the hill.
Going south. We waited till
Yeah.
he got right up by Ed Moose's
Yeah.
house or
And
Pilsuck's.
Hey, ice cream! Run in the house. So then you hear ding-a-ding-a-ding-a-ding. He turns around, he's coming down, ding-a-ding-a-ding. And you get down by Duncan's. Hey, turn around, ding-a-ding. And each time you go by, it was a little slower. Ding-a-ding-a-ding. About that time, Charlie appears on the porch. He says, "You do that one more time, and you'll buy every fucking piece of ice cream he's got."
Yeah.
Well, that guy, but first it was ding-a-ding-a-ding-a-ding-a-ding. Ding, ding. Look
Eskimo
at
Pie Man with a haunted look.
it. Right, exactly.
And PTSD.
All right. Oh, we always had something going.
Ford wants to hear a story.
I would like to request bank.
Bang, bang.
Play bang.
I will tell you, I won't bring them out, but I have I convinced Joe. Joe always had more money than I did. I mean, he would save. Joe, if you needed a quarter, he wouldn't give it to you.
And see, so you guys were about how old?
Oh, I don't
he
know.
was
I was
smart.
10.
He was 7.
Yeah, and I want to tell you about bartending too. Joe and I had to bartend. But anyway, I came up with an idea for a bank. I said, now what we'll do, I said, you had, I think, 5 ones or maybe 6, because that was a hell of a lot more money than I had. So I had $2, and we put it under a bookend. And he put his $6 under that bookend. I said, the way the bank works is that if I need to borrow $1 from you, I will take $1 and I will put it with my $1, but then I have to pay you $1 back plus a quarter because there's interest. Well, that'll all work for him, so got it all set. So we Joe would come back and look under every now and again, so I waited about a day and went in and collected $6 and left. The bank didn't work. So Ma said, Joe goes to Ma and says, he stole my money. And she said, don't trust him. Ma didn't pay anybody back.
No.
Just don't trust him.
Yeah.
But anyway, I've got to tell you a bartender story too.
I got it out of him though. I went through the dime jar several times.
Oh yeah,
I got that.
Oh right. Oh geez, tell the dime
Dollars
story.
and dimes, a lot of dimes.
They saved dimes. They had a little glass jar with a pry top with a slot in it. They wrapped it in paper so you couldn't
green
see it.
paper.
And they put anytime they got dime, well, we'd hit that dime jar a couple times a week for 15, 2 or 3 dimes, go spend it on candy.
Right.
Ma knew what was going on, but he didn't. He
Well,
never did figure it out.
all I remember is that Ma,
That goddamn lid got so loose that it was.
you used to have to pry it off. Great, but we had.
Flick it with a nail, fall right off.
All I remember is that one day they count the dimes, and Christ, $10.
Oh, yeah.
$10 was big money, and if they got $10, well, that would go in the credit union or in the bank. But keep in mind, we drove from New Jersey back home from one of our trips, and we had broke a spring in that old 35 Ford in Tonawanda, New York, and Grandma had in the bank in their checking account they had $5 cash, but you could go quite a way. They had $15. And the guy, and I think somewhere in the shit in the house, the receipt for that spring is there. That guy said, it's going to cost you $12.50. And Ma said, well, you take a check. And he said, madam, I have been in this business a long time, and I've been right where you are. You bet I'll take a check. So she wrote a check for $12.50, which left her what? Whatever the remainder was in the check, with the $5. And that night we drove from New York across at Niagara Falls, and we got about the middle of Ontario, between Detroit and and Buffalo. And there was a schoolyard, and we pulled off and slept in the schoolyard. And I can remember Grandma had a sore neck because there wasn't any, there wasn't any place to lay down. In this 35 Ford, Joe and I are laying in the back seat, and we were fine. But Ma and Charlie were pretty well stove up. But yeah, that was when we broke the spring, and Ma wouldn't let us stay. That's when we took the trip out. We were on our way. Charlie was on vacation, so he says to Ma on Friday night, "Where do you want to go on vacation?" And Ma says, "We're going to Detroit and ride a streetcar and go to the Detroit Zoo." So we drove down to Detroit. And we ride a streetcar, and I remember getting on the streetcar and was worried, but we wouldn't remember where the car was. And so we ride, and then we go to the Detroit Zoo, and we ride their train, but they weren't steam. They were, I can remember they were motorized somehow. But anyway, then he says to Ma, "Where do you want to go?" "How'd you like to see Conrad?" Well, now Detroit, in those days you didn't call ahead. You just went. So they called, we drove to Barberton, spent the night in Barberton, a couple of days, and then he says, "Let's go see Marty." So we get on the turnpike, and I remember being on the turnpike.
Wow.
And Ma wouldn't let us stay all night because we were running out of, we're getting tired, and Charlie's driving. His car had a cracked block that he filled isinglass. Was that what they poured in it?
No, it's
I thought it was isinglass.
silicone carbate.
Carbonate?
Yeah, it's a water glass, they call it.
Water glass, yeah, water
You
glass.
put it in low pressure heating systems, and it
Seals
it coalesces, or it
round the leak, isn't it?
but it's got like a crystal in it, and when it gets to a leak, it'll go up, and the crystal has rough edges, and it'll catch.
Oh, okay.
Then the one behind it catches, and
Oh,
it just seals the leak.
But we had a potty, you peed in a pot, a little pink, as I recall, it was a little pink pot, I don't remember.
It had a handle on it.
Yeah, it had a handle
About
on it.
that tall.
And Joe and I'd have to kneel down in the back seat. And I remember Mom throwing it out the window one time, and the window was down in the back seat, and it all flew back on me. But anyway, the car boiled over, so Charlie had to we got the pot. He went down along the side of the highway and scooped water and poured it in, and we drove on, and we spent the night. I used to know where, but I can't remember now. We spent the night, again, tourist house. So we go up to the door, and here's Joe. I don't know how old he was. He wasn't very old. That was about 1947, 48, right in there. So Joe's 2 or 3. And the lady says, Charlie said, "We need a place to stay." So Ma and Charlie slept in the bed. Joe slept with them, and I slept on a little cot at the foot of the bed. Now, before she lets us in, she says, does the baby wet the bed?" "Oh, mine." I said, "No, he don't wet the bed." So we got in there, and we went to bed. And because I don't think you were potty trained, I think, by that time. But anyway, so about 3 o'clock in the morning, Charlie says, "Jesus Christ, Joe pissed the bed." I mean, talk about midnight sailors. Ma and Charlie are trying. So all at once, we pack up very quietly, leave. I'm sure that woman just hated our fucking guts. But then we went. That's in the Tonawanda. On the return trip, we went to Tonawanda. But Joe and I, Charlie, uncles would get together on Sundays, and Charlie always had 4 roses. So Joe and I have been recruited to be bartenders. Now I am 9, maybe 10. So Joe's 7, 6, and so he comes in the kitchen, and Grandma had a door on the kitchen like this. So they close the door. Now he says, when they come in, he said, you go in and ask them what they want. And then if they want a shot, you get them a shot. And if they want some water with it, back up, you get water. If you want soda, then you take it out and you say, let them taste it. If it tastes fine, then you can leave. If it doesn't, then you have to fix it. Well, Joe and I are sitting out there, and the whiskey is sitting there, and we're pouring it. And I remember saying, and we decided we wanted to taste it. So God, I had a little taste. I don't like bourbon anyway, but I said to Joe, you know, I drank that stuff and I couldn't stand it. And I said to Joe, when I grow up, I'm going to drink good whiskey. That's why, right to this day. But we had to bartend, and they'd
Like good whiskey.
well, they would argue and fight about politics, and Carlin would be there, and he was the lone conservative, and oh Christ, it was fun. You know, we had great experiences. Do you remember the time you made the hot fudge, and then went out and cemented blocks in the backyard?
Yeah, because it was terrible.
Yeah. Or tell them the story about you pulling the gun out of the gun in Charlie's.
Oh, that was, yeah, they had a 32 Saturday night special, they call it. And before school, I was going to Burton, so I was 10, 12, I don't know. And I got the gun out and loaded it up and was fucking around with it, and I shot a hole in the...
Right beside
Jesus.
the door.
Right next to the door through the case, the trim around the door. Well, Ma's working, Charlie's working, and it's cold weather, but it stinks in the bedroom like gunpowder. You know. So I dug the bullet out of the wall, and then I rolled it up and put it back in the case, and I put it in case he counted the shells. He didn't know what he was looking at, so
Yeah, you could see it was all.
and then I opened all the windows up in the bedroom. And Kenny Smith came over, we were going to go to school, and I said, I can't go just yet. Why is that? I said, I got the fucking hole, I shot a hole in the wall. I got the plaster Paris out, and I plaster Paris the damn thing. So, because it just nicked it. Now, so I plaster Paris it, left the windows open. We went to school, and I ran home at lunchtime and closed the windows, and then painted over the plaster Paris and put the shit away, and they never found out about it till he told them.
Right, he's in the Coast Guard. So we're at there, and I'm telling big stories about, you know, Joe's not there, so I'm telling him. And then I said, then he shot the door and shot a hole in your
Door
bedroom,
casing,
right, the door casing in your bedroom. Ma said, what? What?
They never knew about it.
And so I said, well, yeah, come here. I put, and she's crying in the bedroom. Oh, what if you didn't? You know, Ma was always an awfulizer. You know, it was always, just like we went to the Chicago Railroad Fair in 48, 49, and we're in the cab of a big boy locomotive. And I mean, that son of a bitch, that boiler stuck out there. And Grandma's sitting there, Joe's not very big, and we were looking, and Grandma says, could I ask you a question? Because they had a representative from railroad there. And he said, yes. And she said, on a foggy day, can you see the front of that engine? He said, no, ma'am, we can't. It's just out there. Ma was so glad that we didn't live out where Union Pacific, because she could see Joe and I in front of the train. We couldn't see it. He couldn't see us. I mean, it was always, but, you know, and whenever we were around railroad yard, Charlie always used to say, you got to know what you're doing, otherwise they'll throw us out. So we never stepped on the rail. We stepped over it. We always stood way back. And
what about that story that happened in the back room where you made a bomb by putting your...
I don't know anything about it.
That wasn't him.
That was Don Pangborn was home. I had made my homemade gunpowder, and I was going to transfer it from a
mason jar.
From one. Well, I had
He had a maraschino cherry jar that was shaped like a cherry.
Yeah.
Okay.
And I was going to pour it into a container that had a rubber cork on it, or a metal clamp down, so it stayed dry. So Don is there, and I'm telling Don, and Aunt Mildred is there, and Duke, their dog, is there, and Charlie's due home. It's 4 o'clock, about 4 o'clock. Charlie's due home about 5, and so I'm talking to Don, and
How old are you?
Oh, I was 18, old enough to know better. I mean, this is not. Don's in the service, he's home on leave. So I said, well, I don't know if this stuff works. So I put a teaspoon in the fireplace, measuring spoon, and the spark went out like this and went right in the middle of that maraschino cherry jar. Oh, boy. And it was just like slow motion. I put my foot over the top of it, which you never do, and it went boom. And the room disappeared in smoke. And the smoke came down and kept coming down. Duke got scared, ran halfway down Grandma's basement stairs, pissed all over everything. Don is hysterical. Aunt Mildred's laughing her ass off, and Grandma's in the kitchen crying. We threw the windows open, and the smoke just rolled out. Then I find there's a burn on the floor. You remember those Oriental rugs, or the rug scramping?
Yeah.
Move that right over the hole. Move that over there. And the hearth, there was a stain on the hearth.
Oh, yeah.
and so because there were burn holes in the linoleum, but on the hearth is a spot. We can't get that out, and by the time Charlie gets home, the pee is cleaned up off the basement steps. The dog is calmed down. Mildred is still giggling and smirking. Don thinks it's funny, and Charlie walks in and said, "Anything happened while I was gone?" No. By that time, Ma's eyes were dried. Yeah, that was my bomb.
What about the time you almost shot the mailman?
Oh, that was the cannon. You know that cannon? Don's got that cannon.
Oh, does he?
Yep, it's up in. I saw it when I was up there at the last mushroom hunt. My old toolbox is up there in the pair of, what do you call them, clamps that I made in the machine shop. Were up there, and that cannon was in it too. But I had somebody make me a cannon in machine shop at South High School, and he was Peter Langwood, and he didn't know how to put trunnions in it, so he screwed these bolts in the side, which weakens the whole goddamn structure. But the guy, Mr. Van Overen, I don't remember whoever the shop teacher was afraid to tell me no, because Charlie gave them foundry sand to use in their classroom. Well, if he'd have told Charlie said, "You ain't doing that shit." But anyway, he decided not to tell him. So there was a port in the front porch.
Washout port on it.
Yeah, so if it rained.
Brick porch has always had a little opening going out into the yard.
So
Grandpa used to tell us it was a mouse hole.
Yeah. So anyway, I had that thing set up, and I would touch that cannon off, and I would use that port, and I'd put a candle on it so I could get in the house, because the guy across the street, it was just that gun would go off, and that guy'd run out his front porch just like a cuckoo clock. Look up and down the street, back in the house, bang, one drop. Uncle Charlie Carlin lived 2 doors up, and every time I fired, he'd go down and see if his gas furnace blew up. So I had a lot of stuff going. But anyway, I decided I'm going to do this, and I've got it all set, and I've got the candle burning. I've got everything going, and I'm standing there, and I'm looking out the window up and down the street. All of a sudden, I see the mailman. Up this, and you know how he'd go up. Then he'd cut across Graubers, walk right in front of that gun port, and I got out there, and just before that Jet X fuse, just before it hit the fuse. Otherwise, he'd have been going by, and there was nothing in it. It would have scared the shit out of me. God damn. That was the last time I think I pulled that. But by the time we got through, those trunnions are bent. If you ever find it in that toolbox up there, the trunnions are bent back where my homemade gunpowder.
So I have sort of a two-parter. I want to know what Uncle Joe's experience was when Dad had the accident, and then I want to hear the cast story about Dad getting in somebody's Photoshop.
I don't know anything about
that. That's the second time we've heard that.
Where's Cass?
Don and I were.
That's the second time you've lied about that.
Don and I went to the movie. That might have been the night we went to see Deep Throat.
Oh, Jesus.
Well, we'd been out. When I lived on Calgary, and we only lived there a year and a half.
I was little.
You were at Grandma and Grandpa's. You and Ma went someplace. But anyway, we were out dinking around. We came back, and that's when we got the phone call. And it was, I don't know, 10 o'clock at night, 8, 10 o'clock. It was after dark anyway.
Who called you?
I think Charlie and Ennis. I can't remember, but it was either Terry or Chuck and Ennis called. So Don went home and I went to Lansing. And I think you came home and then I left. Well, anyway, I went to Lansing. He was up in the emergency. He'd already been through the
plastic surgery. I was in my room.
You were in the room, and then I asked Terry what the hell happened. Well, that was this, and this, and the guy that hit him, he fell out of his car, and he was in the same hospital. And I said, "Well, what's his name?" She said, "Oh, I wouldn't tell you that."
Who said that?
Your mom. I'm not going to tell you that.
No.
She knew, but she went, no.
She went up to see him.
I'd gone up to see him.
Yeah, she already had.
Did you have the hatchet with
He left the hospital the next day.
Yeah, I was the one that was fucked up.
But didn't he have a plate in his head after?
I have no idea. All I remember is
after probably hit him with the hatchet. Yeah.
Oh yeah, crazy. Well, I would tell you, I was laying in the bed, and this eye, has got. I had a Louis magic turban around it, and which created an ulcer because they didn't keep it warm or moist. But anyway, Joe walks in the room and he's standing there and something about the water heater. And I said, what water heater?
Yeah. Well, Charlie Esner was there.
Oh, was he?
Yeah, Charlie, your mother, father-in-law were there, and I was. I went every other day. I went to Lansing every other day for I don't know a week or 10 days, whatever it was. Then he went home, and I'm not gonna. I don't give a shit. He's home.
Yeah, he's out of the way.
He's somebody else's problem.
Yeah,
Yeah,
I'm not
he was our
changing it.
problem because he was home all the time.
I'm not wiping his ass.
And anything we did outside in the front yard, like there'd be pounding on the front window, and there he's standing there in that purple pajama shirt.
Right.
You got an arm in the sling and another one just with the
right
cast
to the
on,
wrist.
and you got the eye patch on, and you're just going.
I was into everybody's. I was into everybody's business.
Yes, you were.
So then I know I guess it was Rail Fan Weekend.
Yeah.
And we went for Charlie and Chip and I went. That was
No, it wasn't. It wasn't you and I. It was you and I and Bercumpus Installing. She's talking about.
no.
Oh.
You and I and Charlie went to Rail Fan Weekend. That was the
right.
first time I'd ever been there.
Right, because we
But
stopped
you
by.
didn't think you were going to go because you'd been in the wreck.
Right. We're at Werther's.
And that was in '71.
Okay.
We
No, the accident was
lived in the
73.
apartment from 69 to 70. Then we moved into the house on Calgary Street from 70 to 71 and a half or so. So I think we were on Calgary Street. Anyway,
I think you were.
we were on the cinder car in the back of the train. But there's a million people taking photographs, and everybody got to get his camera ahead of everybody. You know, one of those deals. And they had a great big lineup. And we were at we were on that was the Whitaker train because they just pushed it. And they did some other things, but he got off the car and walked around the back of the train while all these assholes are trying to take pictures.
Mm-hmm.
And he can't see him. He's got that patch on
Right.
his eye. and he's all,
See.
and this big mouth down there, he's giving him a hard time. And I got off the car and went down there to visit with him.
Joe said, take your glasses off. I took my glasses out of the big fucking red eye. You know. Said he can't see a fucking. Well, it's Joe's.
Then I was going to try him out in the parking lot.
Try him out.
Try him out
Right. Try him out.
Well, it settled down, and I was still pissed, but the guy was just a fucking idiot.
Right.
So
A real foamer.
I remember Mom talking about this, and that you went, but Uncle Joe had to be trained on how to care for.
Yeah. Yeah.
And
Put drops in mine.
she talked about how just you were just an excellent student. That you
I remembered.
Yeah.
He
but,
remembered.
You were invested in making sure that he, you knew everything that he needed, and Mom just, that was.
She had confidence then.
Right. Well,
Yeah, but she, it meant so much to her. She knew that, she had faith that he was going to be fine because he was with his brother.
Well,
But
with Charlie.
keep in mind too.
I didn't mention him.
Joe was Mom's favorite brother-in-law.
I know.
And when Joe came down one time, it was
My favorite sister.
right, coming down for a cast, and so Joe moves into we get him in his room, and he comes out and he says, I like to sit around my underwear. Does that bother you? Terry said, hell no. After that, every time Joe came, he'd take his pants off, sit in there, sit in his underwear, and talk, watching TV.
Well, if you got an itchy, if you have a personal itch.
Right, exactly. Joe said, my arm ain't long enough to go. I only need one layer. The thrilling days
You got
of
blue jeans on, you know what you're grabbing.
You're right, exactly. I always think I got my belt buckle.
So I know it's getting late. Is there any other stories that?
Well, I've always wondered how you guys got involved with Cass.
That was Grandpa.
Charlie.
Yeah.
He liked Shays, and they opened Cass in 62, 61 or 2.
It was the 50th year of what? 10 years ago? 5? I don't know.
Well, they opened it up a year after they closed it just for tourists.
Oh yeah, that's right.
And I was at Baltimore, and Chuck, my dad went there, and then when I got out of the service, we got to go.
Yeah.
That's when you got in Iraq, and we went. And then we went with Lynn and Vercompass and left Charlie home. Later on, we just cut him out of the.
Right, he was.
Is that when the TV diving?
Yeah, TV diving.
Yeah, it was on the rail fan weekend. Yeah, that's Stallings. Yeah.
TV diving was a big
That
issue.
little narrow ass thing, you got on that guy's TV and did a dive off on his
Right.
bed. That poor TV, you could hear it cracking.
I remember.
I'm
it was a
drinking
plastic
beer. I don't
case.
give a shit
It
what
was
he
a
does. You know,
plastic
and
case.
he and Bert Cubbas didn't drink. Chip and I would drink.
Right. We did all the drinking.
Lynn Stallings, he'd drink a little whiskey once in a while, but I think I saw him drink one beer in 20 years.
Well, but what was it? You always carried a kind of a commemorative.
I got it's in the car right
All
there.
right.
I always, he bought me a Coast Guard flask, a stainless flask,
It's a neat little thing.
and a bottle of.
What was it? It wasn't Jack Daniels.
Yeah, it's Jack Daniels. Is it?
I don't know.
Yeah, Jack Daniels. He went to the distillery, and
Oh.
he doesn't drink.
Yeah.
And they picked, like at Hunley, they pick one person out of the crowd. You can smell the vat. They picked him. Fuck, I don't know what I'm smelling. It stinks to me. It's whiskey.
Yeah.
When he bought me that bottle, I still got the bottle.
Yeah. Oh, that's right.
I've gone through one, but I every time I travel,
Yeah. Stallings. God bless him.
there he is.
Yeah. There's Lynn.
When I travel, I got Lynn.
Yeah.
Lynn
Well,
travel.
I remember
He's a traveler now.
we were at Cass.
He's been dead almost 18 years.
Geez, that doesn't seem possible. Bert
That's
Compass has
crazy.
been gone how many?
He's been gone 10 or
10?
12.
Yeah.
I don't know.
Yeah, I think.
Was that also?
Fucking Stallings. Every
one of
time I think about that son of a bitch, I get pissed.
Oh, I do too.
Well, he was. Like, Christ, we had a lot more stuff to do.
Yeah, I know. I was just going to say, you guys were just getting started.
Yeah,
you weren't even retired
oh,
yet.
Man. No, I don't know. I retired 15 years ago. He's been
17 for me.
He's been dead. He's been dead. Going on 18. October will be 18 years.
Yeah.
But the son of a bitch. Oh God, we had more damn fun getting that.
Were you gonna
And he
ask
didn't
about
talk
Sandy?
dirty very often, but he'd get in the car and then he'd swear like he'd bitch
Oh, yeah.
about work and everything else, and then I'd bitch about work and everything else, and then we'd go on
And
about
of course,
our business.
we go down to Cass, and it would be just yelling and screaming and hollering. And,
Oh, it's fun.
And,
Right.
and we would do Father Guido Sarducci, which Bill Compass would just fall on the floor about.
Well, he would say shit with them all full of
No,
it.
but what his wife used to say, you know, he comes back from Cass so much better, because, you know, being a Christian Reform and stuff, he didn't swear, he didn't drink, and I don't think I ever saw Bill drink.
No, he wouldn't. His dad was a drunk,
Oh, that would, yeah.
and he was bad. And Bill called me or something. I don't know, we were talking to him, and he said his dad and his mother were going to get divorced. I think they did get divorced, but he was talking about his dad having a car. And I said, he's got a car? He said, yeah, I bought him a car. I said, you own the car? Yeah, but he's driving it without a license.
Oh, Jesus.
I said, you own the car and he's driving it? If he gets in a wreck and kills somebody, they're going to sue you.
Yep.
I said, you better take that car away.
Yeah.
You're liable.
Yeah, that's exactly
The
right.
insurance company, they like that kind of stuff.
Oh, they do.
Feed on that shit. They still do.
Was
Yeah,
that also?
bastards.
Was the Cass trip also the one with Sandy?
Yes,
God.
that was a cast trip. Sandy McDonald, yeah.
Right, and we got down
He's
there.
never forgiven me.
Right.
He and I are in the same Legion pools. I see him once a month usually.
Yeah.
Well, but Sandy's got to be mid 80s. He's 80.
He's got,
mid to late 80s.
yeah, he's
And
getting
he's
close
not
to
getting
90.
around as quick as he did anyway.
Well, to say what we had done, we went down there, and it was a big rail fan weekend, and there was Don went with us, and Sandy was going to come down, so we got our beds. Everybody got a bed. Don had a twin bed, and I had a twin bed. It was kind of like a hallway, but a wide one, and then Joe had the only one that was a double bed, and Sandy hadn't arrived yet. So we're in bed, and of course there's when you heat the place, the heat just goes up to the floor because there's a register on the floor above, or in the ceiling. So Joe's up there in the bedroom, and of course it's just absolutely insane. And Sandy arrives after everybody's in bed, and Sandy's saying, "Where the hell am I supposed to sleep?" And everybody's saying, "You're sleeping with Joe." "Oh, the hell I am." And he slept on the sofa eventually. But anyway,
Yeah.
Joe's up there going, "Sandy!" and fuck you, fuck you. Oh,
he was in the Navy.
Right. He is a character.
He'd seen the asshole bender before.
And that's a poor old Sandy, but Cass was a great time. That's where we saw Lucky, or Chance.
Chance.
Joe saw the dog Chance dragging his ass on a wood sidewalk. Joe said, we're going to call him Chance. He's Chance.
He's a good boy.
Right, Chance is going down.
I'd have to call him Splinter in a minute.
Yeah, Sliver.
Don't go with grain.
Jesus, those were good days. Well, that was when you got naked as usual about something and took the picture. Lynn took the picture, and what was Lynn's daughter's name?
Rebecca.
Rebecca was going through her old man's pictures and found Joe's bare ass because he had stuck it out a window. I don't know what he was doing, but I remember there was some guy came in there and he was. We were all same trip with Don and everybody there, and Sandy, and this guy comes in and he's sitting on the sofa and they're talking about nighttime photography, and so Joe and Lynn are both standing there doing their thing, and this guy said, well, the only picture that's a good picture is one with the rods down, and they both unzipped their picture Peter's said like this, and that guy just got up and left. That was it. And everybody else was sitting there, that was, I think, the night of the potatoes too.
Well,
I think that was potatoes.
Passing the potatoes.
Yeah.
Poor Gravy Smith.
All right.
Oh God. I know everybody here, and he did that.
Right.
Hey,
He was big boy.
I was just gonna say. I said.
Grouchiest people I've ever encountered. Holy shit.
Who, Grady?
Grady, he's grouchiest
Oh yeah,
I've
yeah.
ever met.
Yep, he is.
The grouchiest.
Well, when we go down to Cass, what was kind of interesting with Grady, there was three or four of us older guys, and one of his name was Canary. I just called his name, can't remember his first name.
Canary.
John Canary. And John Canary, we'd go in right in the shop door, and there'd be Canary and maybe me and another guy, and he'd look around and he'd say, okay, who's going to piss Grady off first? Because he was pissing us all the time. We'd hide over there. The cab was sitting there, and we'd hide behind the cab because they'd talk about Grady, pissing Grady off, and Grady's, he'd go around, because he was a school teacher, and he'd go around and see who wasn't working in his class.
Yeah.
I mean, he's always teaching. I mean, everything he does is teaching. But you're right, he is grumpy as hell. He is Mr. Grouchy.
Chip, what was your first encounter with Charlie and Welshburn?
Oh God, Welshburn! Welshburn.
Yeah.
It was as though we knew Welshburn.
Yep.
Because Charlie would come home and he'd come home from work because he was working on the maintenance crew. He'd come home and he'd walk through the door and he'd say to Ma, "Do you know what that goddamn Welshburn said today?" And then he'd have to tell Ma the whole story. I mean, it was always. But Welshburn, I think they ate lunch together. I think, and Charlie said they'd sit around and there was just terrible. And one of the things that Charlie told about, there was a young guy that got married. He got married and he was sitting there at the lunch. And they're all talking and somebody said, well, you get married and they kind of get used to, having sex. And so, you when you're at work, you got no idea what, well, made the guy so nervous he went home. and of course they love that. So now some time passes, another guy gets married. So they're going to pull the same crap. So, they get married, they get kind of hot crotch, as my sister-in-law once called it. Said you get a little hot crotch.
One unfortunate visit.
And they just they were going on, and the guy said, "Well, I don't care as long as she saves enough for me." And that was the last time they pulled that joke. And then there was the hard-boiled egg.
Yeah.
So they were trying to get Charlie to crack a hard-boiled egg, which was not hard-boiled.
Right. Oh,
and so Charlie, they all had hard-boiled egg, or it wasn't Charlie's egg. And so, hard-boiled egg, Charlie, crack it on your fork. See if you can crack it on your fork. Charlie wouldn't do it.
No.
I found out later, I don't know if he dropped it or what, they figured out, he fooled them. But it was always Welshburn. I don't remember ever meeting Welshburn.
No, I ever know the name.
Yeah, but the name was as familiar as, anybody else's in the family, because it was always that. And it was never Welshburn. It was that goddamn Welshburn. Yeah. That's why when I heard Evan's name, I literally got emotional, because that brought back times in the kitchen on 1816 Palace Avenue, Charlie coming in with his lunch bucket. First thing he'd say is, "Ma, do you know what that goddamn Welshburn said today?" Well, now there's Evan Welshburn sitting right here, and that brought back all of those memories. because that was part of our routine. Charlie would go to work. I don't know what time he'd go to work, and he'd be
7
home.
o'clock.
Right.
7 to 3.
And dinner had to be at a certain time. It always had to be what he wanted. It was, and Joe and I were not allowed to help in the kitchen. He told me one time, "You stay out of the kitchen, your ma cooks." And Ma had to do, and then Ma was
Boy, you
pissed.
took that seriously.
Yeah, really. Yeah. Well, Ma got pissed off.
Me too.
Bob Steckety was fixing the bathroom because we had the old
We had a tub, and he
iron
pulled the tub, broke the tub up and pulled it out of there.
Yep, got the tub out, and he took the old sink and he put it in his garage. There was still where the porcelain had been eroded.
Yeah,
but anyway, Ma was pissed off because Joe and I didn't make our bed. And every time he'd go in, he could see our room. So Ma's yelling at Joe and I about, "Now you boys," and Steckety said to me one day, he said, "Don't you and Joe make your beds?" And I said, "Well, sometimes." I don't think we ever did, but anyway, I said sometimes, and he said, "Well, something." So Ma's hollering about this Steckety. Joe says, "Why don't you just close the door?" That was the last time we heard anything about the bed. Why don't you just close the door? He didn't have to be in there.
It made a big difference in that bathroom.
Oh, it did. Oh,
because the toilet was about that far away from the tub.
Yeah.
Well, that bathroom was so small, and it had a full-size tub in it. The door opened up and hit the tub, and it had a great big dent in it where hit the edge of the tub.
Every time.
Wow.
Yep. And of course, Ma had that wallpaper in there where it was old.
That Steckety picked that up.
Oh, did he?
Yeah, he found that wallpaper. And
With all the hands sticking out of the shower. They used to scare me when I was little.
Oh, that was Christ. There was all kinds. There was
it was people shaving.
Wallpaper.
Yeah, it was really bizarre.
Yeah.
Black and pink.
I've gone looking for it and haven't been able to find it because I've, like places that show like vintage wallpaper and stuff.
Right.
I've never found it.
No.
No, you'd have to look for vintage creepy wallpaper.
Yeah. Is there a site for that?
I'm sure there
Of
is.
course, the first
shaving wallpaper.
Right. Well, the first renovation they had, and I still remember. I don't know if you remember it, but they had when you came in. Well, we used to have a shed on the back. You come in the shed, and there was a window on either side.
That's where the ice box in all the houses had that little back porch with an ice box.
Right, and it had a drain, so it would drain outside. But anyway, then you'd go into the house, and there was a box where if you went to this way, you went downstairs. If you went straight forward, then you went into the kitchen. And then when you went into the kitchen, then of course you could go straight ahead and go into the dining room. But Ma and Charlie had that all taken out, so you just walked in, and there was the door to the basement on your right, and you were in the kitchen. And then of course the refrigerator used to sit in that little alcove. But anyway, I remember the phone rang or something. I ran out. John Grauberg was there. I ran out to either pick up the phone or do something in the kitchen. I stood on a chair and I reached up because the light switch was just hanging on a wire.
Yeah.
And I got a shock, and boy, after that, Ready Kilowatt.
Yep.
You were afraid of Ready Kilowatt.
Oh yeah, I didn't like that.
Ready Kilowatt. Ma had to put plugs over the because Joe was afraid Ready Kilowatt would jump out through there.
I remember that.
Ready Kilowatt was the symbol or the.
I remember it.
And light bulb head and lightning arms and legs.
Joe didn't like that guy.
No,
And I used to go
You had that in Cleveland growing up. I remember Ready.
That big coal shed, and they had that lump of coal, and it spelled out Coal Man.
Yeah.
Or coal.
Yeah.
And I was afraid of that, and Ma told me it was the Coal Man. I call it Gomi.
Gomi.
It was a Gomi.
Yeah. It was like a guy with a hat on.
Yeah.
It was like a pillbox type hat you used to see old time guys wear.
Yeah, straw floater, kind of a floater. No, it wasn't. It was like the old. Yeah, you're right. It was like a pillbox.
Pillbox hat, but really old guys. Yeah. European old guys wore them.
Yep.
You see old European
almost
photographs.
Like a fez.
Yeah.
Yep, that's right.
It might have been a religious cap. I don't know.
And the face spelled coal, and it was a lump of coal. But do you remember Ma ordering coal? Ma would call
slack. We burned slack because it was cheap.
Yes, but she'd say, "This is Ennis Rogers, 1816 Palace Avenue. I'd like to order 1.5 tons of Pocahontas Stoker P coal." I can remember her saying that. Then the guy would come, and he'd have that slide that we all wanted to grow up and be coal in.
Yeah. Oh yeah.
And then when she would call Goudswords for food, she'd say, this is Ennis Rogers, 1816 Palace Avenue, and I'd like to order some groceries. How are you today, May? It was either May, Nellie, or Nellie that answered the phone, the Goudsword sisters. And then Louis had his bushel basket, and he'd go around the store and put all your order in, and John would cut the meat, and then Louis would deliver on Saturday. And usually about lunchtime, we'd be sitting there in Maui.
Had a sedan delivery.
Yeah.
He drove Chevrolet sedan.
And
delivery.
he maybe two groceries. And I remember for all the groceries, I remember Ma paying between $15 and $20. I never recall anything higher than that. And there might be 2 or 3 bushel baskets. And then the ash man used to come, and when Charlie cleaned out the furnace, he put it in a pan. There's a big wash tub, and the ash man would come, and I remember him coming on he came Saturdays, I think, but he came to the house, and we're eating. We're just sitting there eating, and he come, and of course he'd announce. Louis would announce groceries. The ash man. So he came in because the houses weren't locked. He'd come in the door, and Charlie said, "Joe, did you ever meet your real father?" And to this day, I think that poor bastard's somewhere in the basement, afraid to come out. There's your real father, Ma sitting there eating.
Yeah, I can remember. I don't remember him doing it, but he had you and I out on a Saturday. He went to somebody's house, did something, I don't know, and he called Ma on the phone and said not to worry because we'd had a car wreck and nobody got hurt real bad. And Ennis went out of her mind.
Yeah.
He thought it was funny.
Yeah, he never did that again.
It ruined all my practical jokes. I had to quit doing practical.
Well,
that's not funny.
No.
But no, and Mom.
Him and Tom Prose.
Yeah, Jesus.
Here's a good story. Burton Junior High School.
The others weren't.
All this, every school desk, teacher's desk had a spindle, a stapler, whatever.
Yep. Blotter.
And Tom Prose was going to Burton School, and Chip was
I was right behind him. I was in 6th grade, I think.
And somebody took a spindle off the teacher's desk and set it on a chair, and Tom Prose sat down on it.
And, there's about that much of a...
He sat completely down.
Oh my God!
Buried that thing in the cheek of his ass. Oh. And of course, he got up and he's screaming and hollering, and I think Regatzi came up.
Could have been.
And he punched him in the cheek of the ass and pulled the staple or the spindle out
at the same time.
Then they took him to the doctor, an emergency, or to a hospital or whatever. And the doctor said, well, there's arteries and veins and nerves in there, and he came real close to.
Oh wow!
So I'm playing golf with Frank Southwell. This has been a year and a half ago. And he went to school. He ended up going to Godwin, but he went to South as well. And he knew Pangborn. And we were talking about it, and I got to telling the story about Tom sitting on that spindle because they never found out who did it.
Yeah, that's right. I remember that.
Frank Southwell said, "I know who did it." I said, "You do?" He said, "But I wouldn't tell you."
Absolutely.
Wait, that's twice we've heard that.
Yeah,
Okay.
sensing a pattern.
Right. And after that, when they would bend the spindles.
Their janitors went through and bent all the spindles, and you turned them.
So there's no way they could do it again. Tom was the.
He was the guinea pig.
Well, I was going to say, that.
It is.
But I remember Aunt Amy.
Jesus Christ.
Aunt Amy took me. I can't remember why. Whether it might have been with Joe's scarlet fever, but somebody had to take me up to because I started kindergarten that fall, and I think this happened late, and I was 46, and I know it would have been August or September, and. Somebody had to take me up for the final thing for school. And Aunt Amy, I thought, took me. But I remember I had to pee, and she was zipping up my flank, got the foreskin caught in it.
Yeah.
And Christ. I remember just crying, and they finally got it unstuck. And of course,
That's when you need a good friend.
Oh, yeah.
Yes.
It takes guts to unzip that son.
Right. Oh, God. Oh, let me tell you.
We've all been through it.
I live like this now.
I don't know a guy that hasn't done that to him.
No.
Sounds like a drop of powdered toast, man.
Ooh.
Yeah.
Yes. Jesus Christ, yes.
He knows what I'm talking about.
What a deal.
So tell about that time you did a bonfire in the living room.
It wasn't a bonfire. It was just campfire.
But we got
Small.
it was what had happened was
Started out
what had happened was that we were Ma and Charlie said, Ma told me later it was the first time they'd allowed Joe and I to get up by ourselves. And we got up and they used to subscribe to Life magazine. And so Joe got some matches out because they both smoked. And they got Joe got matches out and we were sitting in the middle of the living room floor, and I said, "Don't do that," because he lit them, and but he would ball the paper up on top of the magazine, and he'd light it, and it would kind of, it got to be fascinating. So I thought, well, this is kind of neat too. So, and Ma said when we got up, we were singing. They were laying in bed laughing about us singing and all this kind of stuff.
Goddamn house on fire.
Right, and so we get ready. This goes on for some time, and I'm thinking they're going to get up. And all of this. So I went in and Joe said, I got to let them know. And Joe said, no. So Joe ran, hid in the front hall closet. And I went in and I said, and I remember walking beside their bed and saying, I think I smell smoke. Charlie was out of that bed. And of course, here's the magazine. And now there's a hole burnt in the rug. And he wants to know where Joe is. He thinks Joe's on fire and is running. And Joe's in the front hall closet, and he picks me up, and I was wearing pajamas, and the pajama material tore. So my bare asses, and he hit me every fucking step of the way, threw me in that bed, and they fished Joe out of the closet. And Joe was there. I told you, you didn't told them. You should told them. So anyway, we're in bed.
They never would have known.
So
figure it out for yourself.
Right. Now, this is a Saturday morning, early Saturday morning. So Joe and I, we were confined to bed. So we get up later in the day. Grandpa comes in. He says, "I guess you can get up." So he says, "Where would your kid like?" A little later, he said, "Where would your kids like to go?" We want to go to Wabassis Lake. So we went up to they did take us up to see Aunt Ada and Uncle Charlie. But that's the same thing that happened after we took that big trip out to New Jersey. And Joe, you had strep throat out there, as I recall, and they had to find you a doctor to give you penicillin. But anyway, we got back there, and then we arrived in Grand Rapids on Friday night. We've been gone a week. And got up the next morning, and Charlie says, "Let's go up to the cottage." But just been on a world tour.
Yeah.
So
3-4 days out in a row.
Right. So we go up to the lake, and
where you been?
And they say, "Yeah, where you been? We haven't heard from you, Annis. Where you been?" "Oh, we've been out to see. We've been down to see Connie and out to see Marty." "Oh, you have not?"
Oh yeah. Yeah, we were.
That goddamn car with the cracked block and the water glass.
All I remember was so hot in the back seat.
Yep.
It was miserable.
Well, you remember we had that blue blanket, and what we would do is have Charlie and Ennis lean forward.
I still had it.
And then they'd lean back, and then we'd tuck it into the back seat, and that was our tent.
Oh, okay.
And the tent was Joe and I'd get under the tent, and as Joe said, it was hot as hell. And the drivetrain for the car came right through there, so there was a hump in the floor, so you couldn't. Yeah, and you could almost feel every bump that.
Yeah.
And you're about that far from being on the pavement, and riding along, and oh, good. Don't let the dog.
Shine that thing up.
Now you got it polished. Don't kiss somebody. But anyway, that was our tent, and that's where we traveled. And Ma, do you remember Ma got us those? They were things because it was going to be a long trip, and if they were little airplanes on a it came down like this.
It sat on the window, and you could lift it up and down. It would
right,
go up
just
and down
slide up and down on the stick, but you
didn't do anything.
Right, you rolled the window up so that it was.
I was always disappointed because it didn't fly.
No. Yeah, well, and we would you could sit there and if you went like this, the plane would go down the pipe, and then you turn it and go up the pipe, and I think it had a propeller on it.
Oh yeah,
and that we wore that thing out. But I used to, when we traveled like that, I would get a little. Mom made us marble bag, and I would go get all of the little things that I liked that were considered important to me, put them in that marble bag, and then hang it on the window roller in the back of that car. So I always knew I had some property.
That's I do with my Crown Royal bag.
Yeah, exactly. Well, exactly. That's exactly.
Well, I got a shoehorn in there. I got a knife.
We can take a tour of the car. I can show it to you right now.
Do you remember Donald, my imaginary friend Donald?
Yeah.
He's still in there.
Yeah.
Oh yeah.
I think I killed him.
He probably did. But Donald, I was before we had you, I think. Uh-oh. God.
Oh, Christ, don't shoot
Oh,
yourself.
Jesus.
Careful, careful.
I was just going to say, what is that? What is that? I saw something fall down his pant leg. What was it?
You have a little more respect for the Walendas now, don't you?
Scott and the Walendas.
You thought it was a trick.
Right, you thought it was just a trick. Not otherwise. Is that all you needed from us?
Any other?
Any other comments?
Well, I'm sure there's more, but...
Well, don't forget, what you have to do, yes, that's what you have to do.
Send him an email.
You have to make sure everybody gets in, you know, you've got a picture of everybody, because the thing that I like best about Terry's video is, at the end, well, you get around in front of the camera and moon it. But
He's a ham, okay?
Hal comes around in front of those.
Yeah.
But anyway.
In a brownout. Two hams in a brownout.
Were you going to say something, Uncle Joe?
Yeah. What's Jane's Ethan?
Ethan, yeah.
He keeps wanting me to do the narrative on that, but I tried to get that video to open up on YouTube again and get nothing.
Right, and I can't. He tried to get me to do something, and the sound was bad, and Grace Ann was supposed to help, and
I don't know.
I thought, well,
I looked at
Jeff
him, and a lot of the stuff is out east that people we don't know.
Right,
I Kitty's parents or
I believe it,
friends of,
or if it's not
June's
Kitty,
parents.
June's parents.
Yeah.
I think that's it. Yeah.
I don't, we
Well,
never saw Ralph until we were 20 years old.
Right, exactly. When Ralph and when
we saw Frank when we went to Massachusetts.
Yep, and there's a picture around here someplace of the Corvette he had. That was it a 53?
He had a 53.
Yeah.
He gave us a ride in.
Yep. Remember, and then do you remember us going out to the tobacco barn? There was a tobacco barn
there. Yeah.
And I remember we went out there and there was a rattlesnake in there, and we kept hearing this noise and we didn't go in. And we went in and told Ma, and Aunt Frances said, well, there's rattlesnakes around here, so Ma wouldn't let us go out in the barn then.
Yeah, see how it was. I'm looking for
All right.
rattlesnakes in Grand Rapids, but I've never been able to get. The guy got bitten at Lamberton Lake years ago.
Oh, I don't remember that.
Oh yeah,
that's right there in town.
Yeah, right Plainfield Avenue. But
Are you done? Are you done
I'd like
with
to
us,
see
Hal?
one.
I think we're done.
I think we're done.
And that's a wrap.
And that's a wrap.
Thank you, everybody.
Yay.
I like mine was going like this, and I like this part when mine was going.